Recording.
Ready to go. Thank you. All right, so welcome to the Thursday, January 15th, 2026 Planning Board meeting. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and I guess formally we'll open the meeting with a vote, accept a motion to open the meeting. Made by Steve, second by Bill. Steve, Stephanie, aye.
Liz, I.
Bill, aye. Bill, aye. Marty, aye. Okay, and that's gonna go 5-0. And I would also like to actually start the business with welcoming Patrick Sullivan, who is our new associate member. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. It'll probably, for the applicants, it'll probably be a little while before he'll be voting on stuff, but he's a full member of, will be asking questions and participating. So welcome aboard.
Yeah, thank you again.
Thank you. All right, the first item on the agenda, actually the two of them together, is the public hearing for 190, 194, 198 Hartford Avenue, and then also the continued public hearing for 182 and 186 Hartford Avenue. Rob, do we have an update on that?
Yeah, so if you recall from the last meeting, there was discussions. It was mostly related to traffic. That's the high discussion item for that project, and probably will be for the foreseeable future. Currently the traffic peer review is ongoing with some of the revised material. The applicant's working with the peer review consultant, and with that, we're not really ready to have that discussion tonight. So the applicant, while everything's getting meshed out, they are hoping to continue to, or have requested a continuance to the second meeting in February, which is February 26th. And the decision deadline will be, it's the end of March, so March 31st.
Okay, so I guess I'd entertain a motion to accept the continuance to February 26th with a deadline of March 31st. So moved. Okay, made by Bill, second by Liz, and we'll start the vote. Steve, please.
Liz, I.
Bill, aye. Bill, aye. Marty, aye. Okay, so that motion passes 5-0, and that is on both of those as well. So that's the all right, so I guess that's the first two items on the agenda. The next item is 180 Page Street. If the applicant could join us. And Rob, where would you like to go with this one?
So we recently received, I think it's the third traffic peer review letter for this project. I think at the last meeting, there was some discussion related to what the revised submission was going to be from MDM. They have submitted, TEC has reviewed, and we have received the third peer review letter, which I think John from TEC can go over. But what I would recommend tonight is if Bob from MDM can go over just the the high level of what was resubmitted, followed by John's basic recap of what has been submitted. That peer review letter, which should be on our website, that was just submitted yesterday, so it's pretty fresh, but it was pretty minimal. So with that, we can discuss that. And then after that, I think I would like to discuss just the formatting of topics and next meetings, so everybody can be kind of on the same page as where we're going with this as far as discussion points. Just try to formulate some game plan here, because I know from the public's perspective, it's probably a little bit difficult to kind of come to the meeting and you don't really know what the topic's going to be. So I think we can, now that we are pretty far into the reviews, I think we can easily format what's to be discussed for the future.
Okay, so it's tonight, stay on traffic as a whole and go from there.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll share my screen, Bob.
All right. So if the applicant, Bob, I think turn it over to the applicant and.
Yes, I'll say thank you for having us this evening. We appreciate it. Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Sullivan, and Mr. Chair. Thank you for everybody's time tonight.
Thank you, Chair and members. For the record, my name is Robert Michaud, the Managing Principal of MDM Transportation Consultants. What I'd like to do is just recap some of the key points that were raised during peer review and what we've been working collaboratively with the peer reviewer to resolve. That included a recent working session with peer reviewer that happened earlier in December. We then subsequently filed on December 16th the balance of responses that became the basis of their recently issued letter, which is frankly pretty clean. I'll step through this at a high level, and I can answer any questions the board might have. I want to keep it pretty focused. So Rob, if you could just advance 3 points we want to really talk about this evening. I mentioned the working session that we've had with peer reviewer on the 9th of December. We prepared a memorandum, which it's actually thicker than the original traffic report, that is dated to December 16th, and it really focuses on 3 principal points. One is understanding it with more precision, the operations at Pulaski Boulevard and that signal, right? There are a lot of questions about how that functions, why it queues, et cetera. So we've done a lot more homework on that, working with the company that actually installed the equipment. We have some very effective solutions on how to make that work better. Secondly, we want to revisit the Rentham Road impacts, which was a continued question. In summary, have identified that it is not Rentham Road as a route is not a principal route for this project per se. We have actually done some more homework as well on what everyone was questioning as the need for a driveway along Rentham Road. So we'll cover those points. And third, we talk about supplemental on-site emergency access routing, which we've successfully identified. And we think it's an enhancement to the plan and addresses some prior comments on that. On January 14th, as Rob mentioned, we did receive the TEC review of that document. And really, it focuses principally on mitigation. I think the outcome of the peer review at this point is resolution of the technical issues that you raised previously. We'll talk a little bit about what those elements include, which is a road safety audit at Pulaski Boulevard, some sidewalk initiatives along Payne Street. And there were a handful of site plan related comments that I think are easily addressed, but they're really in the realm of the site civil plan, which is the topic of another evening. So if you could advance the slides, Rob, I'll walk the board through each of the 3 points that were covered in our December 16th memo, starting with the Pulaski intersection. We've identified, again, more precisely how that location functions. And for the board's information, that is not a standalone signal. There's actually what they call a cluster design. There's a CVS facility that you're aware exists just to the west of the signal at Pulaski Boulevard. That signal actually works in conjunction with that signal. And the easy way of putting this is that the way it's currently phased, the way it's currently operating, has a distinct inefficiency built into it because of that interconnection. And I'll walk the board through what that means in a moment. So we've analyzed that in consultation with the company that had installed the equipment. We've done simulation modeling. We've identified a way to enhance how it functions and substantially reduce the amount of delay and queuing that happens at the primary signal at Pulaski and Payne. So the next slide gives a high-level recap in color format. In this format, you'll see the to the page left, the CVS signal, if there's so much as a single vehicle that is either on the CVS driveway or the opposing roadway, it will trigger a call for that phase to come up. And when that happens, it actually introduces a clearance phase at the Pulaski signal, which you'll see in green arrows in the eastbound direction. And that clearance phase is essentially about a 20-second phase, even for a single vehicle that comes out of CVS. And the concept here, because that introduces a lot of additional length of cycle in the signal, is to determine how we can eliminate that clearance phase and place it so that it's more efficient in another cycle of the signal. So the next diagram, the next slide, in a very schematic way, shows what we're trying to achieve here. In the upper boxes, if you will, each of those boxes represents a phase of the signal. And the very first box has the eastbound and westbound Pulaski approaches, the left turns as a phase. It clears those left turn movements before the through movements proceed. All right, and so just beyond the split box there, you'll see that that's the eastbound and the westbound phase. There's a pedestrian phase that follows that if a call is placed. And then the second colored box there that you see is when the CVS driveway or the opposing driveway gets triggered, it actually creates an additional eastbound phase at the Pulaski Boulevard. And then we proceed from that point to the Payne Street northbound movement and then the concurrent movement of 126 north and south. So there's a lot of phases going on there, right? And frankly, the length of the signal cycle is dictated by that number of phases. By eliminating the second box in the upper and putting that phase to operate concurrently with those exclusive left turns, we can eliminate about 20 seconds from the cycle length of the signal. We've modeled that in Synchro. We've done simulation modeling that we've shared with the peer review consultant. And the next slide indicates what the effect of that improvement is. And it's really highlighted in that blue box, right? The weekday morning peak hours, operations there are pretty efficient. It's the evening peak hours in particular where folks would be inclined to see a longer queue develop on Payne Street heading north. That queue can approach Elbow Street. Sometimes it can even go beyond that periodically. And what this shows is that that current operation, which has somewhere around 50 seconds of delay associated with that movement, can be reduced down to something closer to just over 30 seconds of delay. So it's a pretty significant savings. And really what's happening is you're taking that excess clearance phase from the signal and you're reallocating the green time back to Payne Street to make it more efficient. So the next slide really shows from a queuing perspective what happens. So there's a pretty significant reduction in delay. This slide shows that with that phasing change in place, that the queue can be reduced by up to about 11 vehicles during that peak hour. So it's not an insignificant improvement. It's certainly going to be noticeable by folks who use the signal on a regular basis. And certainly it will be much more than offset any impact that this particular project would add, right? We're projecting that the NECC project at full build out would introduce some additional delay there. It's only about a 5-second change in delay. It could add 2, possibly 3 vehicles to the queue, but what this is demonstrating is that we can actually net reduce that queue by 11 vehicles with that signal timing phase change. So the good news there is that working with the existing equipment, the existing technology at the signal, we can make it work a lot better to everyone's benefit. So that was a principal finding of the December 16th memo. The developer is fully committed to implementing that. It is not a difficult thing to do, but it does require preparing an appropriate signal timing phasing chart, the supporting analysis, and having the company that installed the equipment actually work with the controller cabinet to rejigger how the phasing works. So then the next round of discussion really relates to Rentham Road and the impacts to Rentham Road. My prior testimony before this board in November, we discussed how much additional traffic this project might introduce to Rentham Road. There were continued questions from peer reviewer on providing additional supporting information that would indicate whether or not there's a potential for additional activity on Rentham Road that should be accounted for. So what we've done is what we call a sensitivity analysis. We've provided supplemental information. We look at existing patterns today, how people actually use Rentham Road versus Route 126. And we know that based on today's trip patterns, that if those same patterns apply to this project as they do to people who currently use Payne Street, and either go north or go east on Rentham Road, that there are going to be fewer than 20 additional vehicles an hour that use Rentham Road by residents of this particular project. The sensitivity analysis actually assumed that anyone from the development that was going north or to the Boston market would use Rentham Road. So we actually overloaded, if you will, very conservative assumption. And what that analysis indicated is that even under that extreme condition, which is not supported by how people use the intersection today, even under that more extreme condition, that level of service C or better conditions will exist on Rentham at Payne and on Rentham Road generally. So there's not what I would call a detrimental traffic impact on Rentham Road, which we now have thoroughly documented, and I believe we've cleared with peer review. Now, the other question related to Rentham Road was the notion of adding a driveway to Rentham Road to support the development. And what we've demonstrated in our analysis is that fundamentally, we don't need a driveway from an operating perspective to support the project. The project can be well supported by the two driveways that are currently proposed along Payne. And the level of service indicates that. From a safety perspective, the question was raised, is there a benefit associated with a driveway for emergency response to the site? So we've actually looked at where stations are located that would be providing that emergency response to the site from mutual aid communities, Blackstone, and the Rhode Island side, as well as the main firehouse here in Bellingham. And we've actually done a trip routing to determine what the most efficient way to get to or from the site would be from those various locations. And what we've discovered is that the driveway, if one were provided on Rentham Road, would be literally more than half a mile from Payne Street, and would actually not be aligned with the more direct response from any one of those stations to the site. In fact, it would introduce an additional, I think it's about a quarter of a mile or almost half a mile of travel distance to get to the site via Rentham Road if a driveway were provided there. And I'll show you this on some slides in a moment. The team did look at what would be required to provide a driveway on Rentham Road. It would require a bridge crossing of more than 500 linear feet. It would have to traverse a topography, a difference in elevation of more than 30 feet higher than a single family home. And it would result in extreme wetland and riverfront impacts on the order of more than 25,000 square feet of wetland buffer area or wetlands, and more than 25,000 square feet of riverfront impact. So from an environmental perspective, it would be an extreme solution for what we have deemed to be a not supported need. So the next slides will walk you through that analysis. This graphic shows the relationship of the site, and you'll see in orange, right? That's Route 126 there, and to the west of the Pulaski signal on the Blackstone side. And then again to the south on the Rhode Island side, the location of various responding apparatus that may need to get to the site, right? So we've got to the south, mutual aid response from Woonsocket Station 4, which is a mile away. We've got mutual aid response from the Blackstone Fire Station at about a 1 mile distant west of the property. And then we've got the Bellingham Fire Headquarters, which is actually 4.7 miles north of the site, immediately, via Route 126. And of course, we've got Station 1, which has limited capabilities. There's no tower vehicle there. And what's also shown on this is the more direct means of getting to the site, which is directly via Payne. And it also traces in a dashed form the distance from Station 1 to where a potential connection or driveway would be provided to the site, which is some 4,000 feet away from that station versus the more direct route to the Payne Street driveway, which is only a couple of thousand feet away. So that provides some reference points, if you will, and how we've assessed need. The next slide actually provides kind of a more zoomed in version of that. This shows the Bellingham's fire station at Rentham Road. It shows the route along Rentham Road that would need to be taken to a potential driveway connection, which again would only bring you to the very easterly corner of the most easterly building, some 4,000 feet away, versus the route that would take you directly into the site and to the core of the site, which is only 2,000 feet away. So, we've determined that the likely response routes from each of the responding stations, the stations that have ladder apparatus, pumpers, ambulance facilities, et cetera, would actually be much more directly served via Payne Street. With that context, we understood there to be a concern about enhancing the ability for fire apparatus or emergency responding vehicles within the property itself. In the originally proposed form, there would have been two ways to get to and within the site. One would be at the new driveway at the foot of the hill. The second would be at what is today's existing driveway, which would be converted to an emergency access driveway. Entering in either one of those locations, once you're on the site, there would be two means of getting around the buildings. And we've actually identified a third, which is in the next slide, in color format. So the orange line represents the Payne Street connections into the site by either the driveway at the foot of the hill, which is page up, and then the lower emergency access only driveway to the page south. And then once you're onto the site, there are three viable routes to get in there. The very first would be the blue route, which brings you directly into the core of the site, or the westerly building. The yellow route, which is a circulation aisle, that brings you to the very heart of the development. And the third, which is a green route, which is the new one that we've identified, which would bring you to the southerly portion of the site. That location is actually currently a cart path that would be enhanced. It would be widened and structurally supported so that fire apparatus and responding vehicles could use it effectively. The next slide actually shows some detail on what that looks like within the site itself, right? So that bubble, if you will, that you see in the center of the drawing is really the central portion of the site. That's that prior route that I mentioned, the yellow route that would bring you into the heart of the development. You'll see in blue the location of the existing cart path, which would be widened and structurally supported and would actually bring you to the most southerly building on the property as the third means of getting to and within the property itself. So we think we've made significant strides in terms of addressing fire response and emergency response capabilities to the site by adding that third leg. Finally, I think it would be worth just recapping what mitigation has been offered to date. Bless you, and through the peer review process and discussions with planning and additional analysis that we've provided. First, Pulaski Boulevard, which we've described already, would be rephased and optimized so that it presents a vastly improved operation relative to current conditions. Subsequent to and as a condition of approval of the project, the applicant is committed to conducting a safety audit of the Pulaski intersection. And to be clear, a safety audit is not intended to provide structural improvements to the intersection or anything like that. It's really intended to identify existing crash trends and causal factors and recommend actions that would enhance the safe operation of the intersection. Our firm has done many of those in the Commonwealth. I've worked on many projects that have made the same commitment to implement as a condition of approval. I have peer reviewed many projects that have committed to doing that as a condition of approval. And the ordinary outcome of that is things like improved pavement markings, enhanced signs, making sure that they're compliant with current standards, even looking at clearance times for the signal to ensure that there's adequate time for vehicles to properly clear the intersection before another phase occurs. So those are the types of outcomes that we would expect in that type of a road safety audit. The developer has also committed to implementing the recommendations for short-term, easily implemented solutions that would be identified in that report, which is again a typical commitment for a project like this as a condition of approval. Regarding Rentham Road, we're aware that Station 1 is located there, and we're aware as well that there are existing signs that would request folks to not block the intersection to the extent queues occur. Those are appropriate signs, but they could be further enhanced by pavement markings that would augment those signs and make it clear where folks are supposed to stop if they need to queue. That would be another commitment of the developer to implement those markings, consistent with other locations in town. Rockland Bank right here on Route 126 has one at its driveway. It's that type of a marking that we would be looking to implement. Third, Payne Street, we've discussed it at length. Of course, the intention is to provide at some point, subject to warrants, a signal at the foot of the hill. We've identified that, and I've got a slide that would recap what that looks like. And part of that implementation, that driveway, would be the reconstruction of sidewalks on the westerly side of Payne Street, with a new pedestrian crossing built into the intersection itself and integrated as part of the signal operation once the signal became warranted and implemented. In addition to that, at the top of the hill, which we provided a detailed analysis for, we've done a detailed dive in crash records, working with the police department to understand crash trends and what could be done to make that a safer location. We've identified a driver speed feedback sign assembly at the top of that hill. The introduction of high visibility reflectorized pavement markings and chevron signs that would make it much clearer, particularly at night, where the curve exists, where the edges of the road exist. I'll point out that the crashes that have occurred there are all at night between midnight and 5 a.m, involving single vehicles. It's apparent from those crash records that the visibility is something that really needs to be addressed there, and that these types of actions directly address that. In addition, there would be the placement, once the signal at the foot of the hill were implemented, a signal ahead sign that would be activated when that signal became activated, so that it would be abundantly clear to anyone approaching from the south, traveling north, that the signal had turned red. right? So that's a kind of a belt and suspenders way to advise people as they're traveling toward the site that there's a red signal ahead. And that's a common design element. Sidewalk improvements, I mentioned, there's some 500 linear feet of fully reconstructed sidewalks that would be part of the driveway design and the signal enhancement at the driveway. The town and some other recent projects has implemented sidewalk improvements from Pulaski Boulevard south along Payne, but there is a gap between where the signal will be located and those sidewalk improvements and where the recently improved sidewalks exist near Pulaski. It's about a 600-foot segment. And the commitment there is that the developer would provide a contribution to the town for purposes of implementing, at least in part, that reconstruction of sidewalk, right, on a fair share proportional type basis. So we think there's an appropriate solution for sidewalk improvements along Payne Street, particularly for that gap. I will point out that there may be some land takings or acquisitions that would be necessary to ensure that the width of the sidewalk and the orientation of the sidewalk were entirely within the public realm. And as a result, it's not a project that an individual developer could actually implement. It would really need to be a town project from the standpoint of the land that may be required or the easements that would be required to achieve that. But there is a commitment to work with the town to assist the town in actually advancing that. Most likely through the design of the driveway that would include the design of an enhanced sidewalk and some level of funding to be further discussed with the town. And finally, this project will be subject to transportation monitoring, as is the case in any large project like this. It's always beneficial to go back and measure the actual performance of the project at checkpoints, if you will. That monitoring would determine the need and the time at which the signal would be warranted at the foot of the hill. That would be subject to additional review by town peer review consultant at that time. But that will be part of the mitigation program as regular monitoring of the site as it continues to evolve and have increased occupancy. So the next slide just provides a tutorial again to remind the board what the signal improvements would look like at the foot of the hill. We, through the peer review process, have modified what was originally proposed. You'll see a center median island now on the driveway and a single exit lane. So that on day one operation, you would essentially have a single wide lane in which to exit the property, which would be sufficient to serve the needs of the development. But the island feature actually provides the ability at some point, if it's warranted, to develop an exclusive left turn lane as well. So that island feature could be converted to a lane if necessary at some future date, depending on what the monitoring indicates is appropriate. You'll also see the widening of Payne Street to provide the exclusive southbound left turn lane into the property. We've also added an exclusive right turn traveling north, that's page right, into the property to allow for proper deceleration into the development. And you'll see the pedestrian crosswalk that is just on the north side of that intersection on the left side of the drawing. You'll also see in brown format the 500 linear feet of reconstructed sidewalk that I mentioned earlier that would tap into the existing sidewalk on the left side of the page, the north side. That's the beginning of what we would call the gap, right? That's an existing sidewalk. It does need repair in certain sections. It would need to be brought up entirely to an ADA compliant standard. That's the commitment that I mentioned earlier in terms of advancing design to include that and some contribution to the town to assist in actually implementing it, but the implementation would be by the town. I know, and this has come up on several occasions, there is a crest in that road in Payne Street that would actually be lowered to the extent feasible. And our analysis, which has been peer reviewed, does indicate that the sightline criteria would be entirely met Even without the lowering of that crest, it would be met, but lowering the crest is an objective of this design and would further enhance the visibility of vehicles that would be turning into or out of the driveway. The next slide really just recaps that gap that I mentioned. So in yellow, that's the recently improved sidewalk segment along Payne Street from Pulaski. The orange is the proposed that's associated with the driveway reconstruct or new driveway construction and future signalization. And what's shown in that bubble right there is that 600 linear feet of sidewalk that would be redesigned, if you will, and eventually reconstructed through assistance by the developer. And that concludes the brief overview of what we've done. Glad to answer any questions. Hearing yours here as well to corroborate any of the information that I just presented.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Before we open up to questions, I guess I'd like to hear Tech's comments. You could grab a chair and bring it up, or if you're comfortable standing, feel free to do that, whatever you prefer. Right there. Thank you.
All right. So, yeah, to sort of follow up on that, especially on those three major points. First was the signal phasing that they relooked at. With our first peer review letter, I think, we all saw that the cues that were being shown initially as the existing conditions, they didn't match reality. And so with this updated timing to show how the signals are actually working together as that cluster, they provided updated queuing. And so that shows something that's a lot closer to what we see in real life today, which makes a lot more sense. Where you have at least 50% of the time, the queues extending beyond Rentham Road. 5% of the time during peak hours, it's extending effectively to Irving Street, if not Elbow Street and beyond. So what they were able to do, we have concurred on their new analysis that they have run through that. And that shows that with the signal timing improvements, because the phasing, as they mentioned, it's inefficient. It's incredibly inefficient. And so with those changes and their additional volumes, it would reduce those queues overall, essentially. So we did agree with that. And that was actually number 10 on ours, which also led into the safety, which was addressed a bit as far as the road safety audit. And I do want to point out that we are continuing to recommend either that our initial recommendation was to have the road safety audit and have those mitigation opportunities identified prior to approval so that those could be defined. And perhaps generally it could be low cost things, but there are times where more substantial things are identified as critical to safety, especially with an intersection where you have unique pedestrian islands at some obscure angles with slip lanes. So we would recommend that either the safety audit be conducted prior to approval, or that a sum be given to the town and it be a town-led safety audit, and some amount be provided for improvements, assuming that improvements will be needed. So there's some offsetting benefits and risks to that. Not knowing what will come out and trying to define a number for that beforehand. There's a little bit of risk on both sides of it not quite balancing. But if the intention is to move to conditioning and potentially approval before doing it, it would make more sense from our perspective for it to be town-led at that point. Another benefit to that is then if it's done as a proper formal RSA with MassDOT, that report then gets published through a formal system and can then be used by the town for different things such as applying for grants and things along those lines to try and mitigate some of the safety issues as well. So there's pros and cons to both options. Our recommendation is that if it's going to be proponent-led, it be before approval or potential approval. And if it's going to be after that, that it be town-led and a sum be provided to the town to cover those costs. The trip distribution that was brought up, we looked through the sensitivity analysis, which, as they said, was what is the absolute worst case scenario that would never possibly happen, where everyone going this direction is taking Rentham Road. We agreed with the assessment that they did and the level of service, so we were satisfied with that. And then emergency access, looking at the potential connection to Rentham Road from the site. The biggest issue there, not necessarily that path would be faster, but it would be redundant and different. Given the environmental impacts though, and the extent that it would impact, we recognize that is beyond what would be necessary, particularly with the environmental impacts. And we appreciate the third access route going into it. I think that's important to have in there. So we have considered that comment to be satisfied based on the impact it would have to create that additional driveway. So those were sort of the three major things there through that. So again, with the safety, Payne and Pulaski, we agree with the assessment that they would provide updated markings, pedestrian safety improvement, things along those lines, don't block the box, and those can be better defined as part of a condition. The right turn lane at the signal, or essentially everything related to the design of the new signal that would be at the driveway. We concurred with a lot of that. We appreciate the recognition that it would need to be warranted at the time during occupancy and not implemented before that. That was one of the things we were asking for and they've agreed to, so we appreciate that. One thing we would also want to point out is with regard to the mitigation to the sidewalk. We believe it would be appropriate for the applicant to fund the balance or the cost of the full sidewalk replacement. And it would be appropriate to require a bond to be provided that would, cover any costs for that. And then that could be implemented at a later date, but there should be a value determined for a bond prior to any approvals in our opinion. So those are the major things with the traffic study. There were a couple of comments we still have with regard to the site plan. And this, also goes back to safety with emergency access, the road that goes from Pulaski to Pulaski, that's, I believe it's called Road A. We've asked for a profile of that road to make sure that there's appropriate sight lines, things along those. If it's above certain grades, it may need additional approvals, and that hasn't been provided yet in the updated plans. And also, we would still like to see fire truck turning movements through the updated plans. So those were our two major comments that still are there for the site comments.
Okay. One question about the working session that was going on in December, was the public safety, fire chief, or the police chief involved with any discussions that have happened with the access to Rentham Road?
They've been involved in working sessions. That one in particular was mostly related to the analysis for the Pulaski Boulevard intersection.
Okay.
But if you don't mind,
Please.
can I just jump in? Because I know that there was
Go
a
right
lot
ahead.
of discussion related to public safety, and John, I think, hit the nail on the head regarding those two outlying items related to the profiles and truck turn.
Yeah.
So those two comments were heavily related to the civil peer review side because it's related to the site plans.
Yeah.
That's ongoing. There's obviously crossover between the traffic impacts and the civil side. That civil peer review is ongoing, and it essentially, I imagine Bowler is going to resubmit plans and comment responses at some point in the near future. where, those two items will be discussed in the future, I anticipate from the applicant, because that's usually the forum to handle that through the site plan review. Related to public safety, because I know this has been a hot topic really since the beginning of figuring out when can we discuss the public safety aspect. We have brought it up, or the applicant has brought it up quite a bit tonight. What I feel we should do is for the public safety aspect, if you have questions related to this, feel free to ask them, but I would probably table those discussion items for the next meeting, because what I would like to do for the board applicant and for the public's knowledge, items related to public safety, utilities with DPW, and some other higher arching items related to perhaps like the 55+ restriction that we discussed. I think we should have the next meeting to discuss these items. With that, we can have public safety here. Well, the fire chief, police chief, and our DPW director, I've already talked to them to make sure that they clear, Thursday night to be here to discuss. Really, it's the utility studies, and then, these discussions related to public safety for access and such. Because if we really haven't discussed it at great length, I don't think either of the chiefs have made any testimony for the public hearing aspect of this project. So we can have a more in-depth conversation about that with the experts in the room.
Okay, so that would definitely continue the conversation about the exit out the back to Rentham Road being a public safety issue without the chiefs weighing in. That's where I was going.
Yep.
Was that if they weighed in, I'd certainly want to hear about that.
Yep.
All right, so I think that's a great way to go. The board have any concerns with that type of a plan? I don't think. Definitely, okay. All right, then what I'd like to do is, I know there's lots of questions about what we just heard. I'd like to turn it over to the board. And I know I've got some questions as well. If there's somebody on the board that would like to ask some questions first. Steve, do you want to go in any direction?
Just a few questions. I won't repeat comments from prior. But my first one is, you had mentioned land taking. So I want to know exactly what you mean by that, where it is, how much it is, because whenever I hear land and taking, it's a red flag for me. So I want some specifics on what you're actually talking about.
Sure. So we know that the right of way along Payne Street it's not a straight line. And the actual constructed roadway, portions of that roadway actually exist outside of the public way as it's legally defined. And there, we believe, may be portions of the sidewalk on the northerly portion of in that bubble area that may exist within private property, or in a case where the sidewalk isn't quite 5 feet wide, may require that it be widened to 5 feet wide, in which case maybe a foot or so impact to the adjoining property. I can't speak to why Payne Street or the sidewalks got built the way that they did. It goes back many decades. It does not follow the traditional norms of how you would lay out a road. There's a significant amount of land on the west side, the left side of Payne Street, that what appears to be people's front yards is actually in the public way. It's a really strange thing. So as it relates to the sidewalk, the reason I mentioned that the reconstruction of that would need to really rest with the town is that the town would have the sole means of securing the easements or the takings that would be required to achieve an appropriate design along certain parts of that sidewalk. It wouldn't be something that a private interest could dictate to private landowner. It would need to be a public project. But I'm not suggesting that those takings are substantial. And they could very well just be easements, so that the entirety of the sidewalk would be within the legal bounds, and responsibility of the town.
And I think just one, and board member, Gray, I think just to be clear, we have never had any intent to do any takings or any need or requirement. And I think, again, we wouldn't necessarily see there to be a need. I think it really comes up in the context of some of the discussions about improving the sidewalks and our role in that mitigation. So I just want to be clear that, it's not, that any requirement or request to do any type of taking or easement is not, did not originate with us. Again, it would be maybe part of a collaborative effort of some sort, but it's nothing that we are not asking for it.
All right, my second comment is, my concern is Elbow Street too. I'm not sure what the answer is, but my concern is that with as many units as being proposed, that people can quickly realize that taking a right onto Elbow Street coming down Payne Street is a quick way to avoid any congestion, and that suddenly becomes a throughway to get to Rentham Road. Right, so I don't know what the answer to that is, but I'm sure the people on Elbow Street are pretty concerned about that.
Sure, we actually took a good look at that. We actually went out, and I presented this at the last hearing. We counted volumes and patterns on Elbow Street, on the Payne Street side, as well as the Rentham Road side. We quantified how many folks actually do that today. There's a graphic in the prior presentation that I've given that shows what that volume is. I want to say that it was about 11 vehicles an hour northbound in the morning that would do that. And on the reverse direction in the evening, I think it might have been slightly higher. It might have been closer to 20 an hour that do that. So it is quantified. As a percentage of the vehicles that are actually going to Rentham Road, it was a relatively small percentage. Most of the folks who are going north on Payne Street in the morning or at night, who are headed to Rentham Road, actually go all the way up to Rentham Road, right? And so we've quantified that. And if we apply the same percentage, if you will, to any new traffic that would be generated by the NECC project, the increase was estimated at fewer than 5 per hour. So we're not saying it wouldn't happen, but we're saying that if you apply this exact patterns that we see today, the additional trips, that's the kind of number that you would see. That increase would be, fewer than 5 per hour, and that represents one vehicle every 10 minutes or so that would be inclined to do that. So that's the order of magnitude.
But you said one vehicle every 10 minutes would cut through?
Yeah, if you
That's-
use.
To me, would be substantial for someone who lives on Payne Street.
Sure, and I'm just objectively
I mean,
saying what the number is, yeah, so we're not suggesting that that it is or isn't a problem, but it's a relatively modest volume generally. Certainly if you live along Elbow, you probably feel differently about that. But I will also say that the signal enhancements that we just talked about will vastly improve how that approach works, and your inclination to use Elbow Street would be that much less, right? If the queues just simply aren't building up to Elbow Street, why would you go out of your way to, it's a longer route, frankly, it would be easier to just simply go to Rentham and make a right turn. So we think that the signal enhancement will actually reduce the propensity for people to use Elbow.
And my last question is Diamond Hill, Walnut Hill Plaza, Diamond Hill Plaza is going through a resurgence. There's a grocery market that's going to be soon opening up where Sears was.
Okay.
And I know there's a big push to fill all of those empty spots.
Mhm.
So has there been any consideration with regard to traffic as it relates to what that might look like when that gets when that resurgence takes place? Because I think it's a matter of time. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And anecdotally, it would seem to me that that would create some substantial traffic if those two plazas become active again.
Right. So the impact the assessment that we've prepared is for the highest peak hours that happen in the morning and the evening. And let's just take a scenario where someone is inclined to go grocery shopping, which is your point, right? Usually during a peak hour, a commuter peak hour, folks would be inclined to make a shopping trip to or from their ultimate destination. It's simply, if you're coming back from work, you stop at the grocery store, continue on your way home, or vice versa, right? Not saying there wouldn't be some effect during a peak hour for a new trip, but it would be a discretionary trip by somebody who lives in NECC's property, a discretionary trip at say 4 or 5, 5:30 in the evening as to whether or not it makes sense to go make a specific trip at that time just to go grocery shopping. My experience say that if someone wants to make a grocery trip, that they would do so probably after dinner time hours or in the middle of the day or on a weekend when it's easier to do so and you're not going out of your way to do so. So,
Well, let me just, I'll just comment in my opinion.
Yeah.
From the looks of grocery stores in the area, people are there all day long. I
Sure.
very seldom see an empty grocery store parking lot.
Yeah.
But my real question is, has it been contemplated? I mean, you're telling me what you think we should expect, but were these figures that you did on the analysis, including that, that we might see a resurgence of Diamond Hill?
Yeah, we don't specifically call that out in the study.
Okay.
Honestly, it's that gets to a microscopic level that, it could mean that instead of there being, 10 left turns an hour coming out of the driveway, it might go to 12 or, 14. It's not the type of increased activity to a specific use at a specific plaza
Well, when you say left out, you're talking about out of the.
out of NECC, yeah.
Right, but I mean, that's just a small piece of that. I'm talking about traffic that's generated, not just from there,
I
but
see.
overall.
Okay, understood. I was over interpreting your question. So we do build in growth assumptions into the traffic report. We've used a conservative estimate of growing traffic over a 7-year period of time, using growth rates that are specific to this area. So we have accounted for growth in traffic on area roadways. And the use of what we call a general background growth rate accounts for undefined developments, just like you're pointing to, that would come online or increase activity over that 7-year period. So the report actually does factor that in.
So you factor in general growth.
Yes, and that general growth could be the resurgence of a supermarket. It could be a new residential development that has not yet been specifically defined, but could come online within a 7-year period. A whole host of things. And so what we do in the studies, we look at growth patterns and trends that are specific to Bellingham in this case, and apply those. Actually, we've gone above and beyond the historic levels. We've applied a more conservative growth rate. So we're confident that we've accounted for that type of growth.
So not to drag this out, just one last quick thing. So are you familiar with Diamond Hill?
I'm not a regular
Okay.
visitor there.
Because I'm just curious if that 7% growth rate is accurate, or as accurate as it could be, given that Diamond Hill area is a large complex,
Mhm.
in both plazas. So 7% may be looking at incremental growth over time, where if this thing actually takes place,
Mhm.
it may be accelerating that 7% growth rate. And again, I don't expect, to reinvent the wheel here, but I do know this area like the back of my hand.
Sure.
And all of those places are filled like they claim they're going to be.
Right.
I think it would be substantial anyway.
Yeah, and I think to your point, and you mentioned it, that there's not any specific hour of the day when all of a sudden it magically gets extraordinarily busy there. They're busy typically throughout a day.
Yeah.
And people, they are discretionary trips, right? Some folks would prefer to go to a plaza at 10 in the morning if they have that luxury, right? If they're not working that day or if they work from home, where other people don't have that luxury, maybe kind of a 9 to 5 type scenario where it's simply easier for them to go to or from on the way to or from work. So it's complicated. Some of the uses in that plaza draw a substantial amount of the business from pass-by traffic. That again, it's a matter of convenience, not necessarily a dedicated sole trip from a location to and from. It's usually linked to something, either going to work, coming back from work, linking it to going to the dry cleaner at the same time. There's a lot of factors that go into it. So the use of the general growth factor is a well-established, way to account for that, and that's what we've done.
Do you have a question to piggyback on that?
Yeah, and I think that your last comment, Steve, was pretty interesting. I think if this project is built, it's gonna accelerate the development greatly of Diamond Hill Plaza. Dramatic. You're gonna have, I don't want to say a captured audience, but an over 55 audience that may not want to travel far. You'll have new people coming in that area. I think you'll see dramatic growth in Diamond Hill. If and when this is ever built. And I want to thank you for bringing it on.
Yeah, but I agree with you, Steve. When you look at the Sears building, it's got a sign in front saying opening up this spring. That's right there. If I was the owner of that plaza, I'd be very excited to have a project like this coming in. With the growth potential of that plaza, you've got jewelry stores in that plaza that's closed down. There's empty buildings all over the place, and it really could be within walking distance. Maybe not that hill, but of your facility, if there was a way to do that. But I absolutely agree with you, Steve. I think 7% might be underestimating this 7% of the ballpark that you use standard wide. But I think in this case, it might, with the fact that the businesses there, and you even go down further down the street, Lowe's used to be down there. The businesses, there's a slowing pattern down there with, over the last 10 years of that area, being quieter. I think you're going to find that with a project like this, it's going to bring some growth to Diamond Hill Road, basically. Which, if I was a developer up there, I'd be excited about. That's not what we're here to talk about tonight.
And a comment to that, go right ahead. I know the applicant may not appreciate this. Talking about what was done in the past. But the previous item we voted on, the owners proposed a resurgence in the plazas on Diamond Hill. So much so they were looking at having golf cart paths to bring you from their project to Diamond Hill, anticipating that at some point that would just explode in growth, and try to make it easy for the residents that was proposed and approved by the town years ago. I don't want to harp on that, but they thought enough to think about putting the ability for homeowners to use their carts to get to Diamond Hill Plaza. And that that was talked about. But I think,
Yeah,
I just wanted to mention that.
do you want to continue, or do you want
No,
to go back to Liz?
Oh, go to Liz.
Okay,
Thank you.
Liz, or yours?
I have a couple questions about the rephasing of Pulaski.
Mhm.
What does that process look like? How long does it normally take?
Sure.
Is it just sort of like one and done, or do you test it and then see if that works and test retest it?
Yeah, so it starts with preparing a phasing timing chart that a contractor could use to reprogram the controller, which is, it's just a computer, right? And they go in and the firm that actually installed that equipment, we've already discussed with them, surely they can actually do a lot of this remotely now. They can actually dial into the controller and do it remotely. So it's really just developing that timing phasing chart, which an engineer would do, that would presumably be MDM. And we would work with the signal maintenance company, the folks who install the equipment, have them implement that, and then there would be field testing of that to determine its effectiveness, right? So it's what we would call fine tuning. So, the question becomes, how much clearance time should you be building into when CVS releases and the westbound lane left? How much time do you need? Right now, there's excess time in how that's calculated. So that would be shown in the chart. It would be programmed, and then there would be a field test to observe. And if a fine tuning adjustment would be necessary, that can happen either remotely or in field. Usually, that kind of a process can happen over a 4 to 6 week process. It's not an extensive process.
And there's no downtime to the intersection? Okay.
None whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then would you monitor it again after, if the project goes through and then you put the new signal in on Payne Street? Is there another review of the phasing at Pulaski as well?
Correct. So the signal at the driveway would be equipped with a controller that has the ability to coordinate timing and phasing with Pulaski Boulevard. It doesn't necessarily mean that they would be coordinated, they can coordinate and talk to one another. Okay. The traffic monitoring I mentioned earlier as a mitigation item, that would be done on a regular basis, right? So at defined thresholds of occupancy is typically how it would work. Let's say for every 100 units of occupancy, you go back, measure traffic at the driveway as well as the signal at Pulaski to determine whether or not you're meeting signal warrants at the driveway and whether or not an adjustment to signal timing would be necessary at Pulaski. And that would happen, again, as an example, every 100 unit occupancy it would trigger the need to go revisit that. Just to give you some context on when a signal might be warranted, because we did a sensitivity analysis on that. We believe that somewhere around 300 to 350 units is when the first warrants would be met for a signal. So while monitoring would be done on, let's say, 100 unit occupancy thresholds, it wouldn't really be until you get up around 300, 350 units that you would even warrant a signal. And it's not likely that you would need to make any changes to the signal timing at Pulaski until about that level, if at all. The way that the Pulaski signal works is it actually has a variable length depending on how much traffic occurs during any particular hour of the day. So the signal will say, okay, at minimum, I need for Payne Street, I need 35 seconds. But during a peak hour, if I need additional time, I can go up to 45 or 50 seconds if I need to. And that's the detection part of the signal. So there's an ebb and flow of demand, and the signal responds to that. So at 100 or 200, or maybe even 300 units, we don't anticipate that there would be a need to modify the timing of it because it's already kind of accounting for fluctuation in traffic. But it would still be monitored. And if there was a need to change that timing, then it could be done at that time pretty easily, actually.
Okay. And then the monitoring as part of mitigation, who would be in charge of making sure you're actually doing the monitoring? Who do you submit the reports to?
Yeah.
And then what is sort of the recourse if you find that it's causing all sorts of traffic issues?
Sure. So typically on a condition approval, there would be an established protocol for when the monitoring would be conducted with a requirement that the report be done by a qualified engineer and that report be provided to the town, typically to the planning department or the building department so that they can review its findings and if necessary, have it peer reviewed. And if there were any obligation to change signal timing, for instance, it would be identified in the monitoring report. If there was any question about whether or not that was correct, you'd have the ability to have it peer reviewed and by another qualified engineer. The analysis that we've done a lot of what we call sensitivity analysis here. We've assumed, higher proportion of traffic going to Rentham Road than we think is actually going to happen. What happens if that does happen? We've tested and simulated the signal at Pulaski, assuming 7 years of growth, full build out of the project at 850 units. It's not even close to maxing out, if you will. So there's a lot of unused capacity within it at the intersection, frankly. And with the phasing changes that we just mentioned, we're gaining back 20 seconds of time. So we can kind of sprinkle that around where we need it more efficiently. And it opens up a lot more capacity at the intersection. So I don't believe that the monitoring would indicate the need for anything other than signal timing adjustment, which is pretty easy to implement. And then the other major piece would be the signal at the driveway warranted or not. It's pretty clear cut. If it was warranted, there would have been a design, ready to go for that. So it's just a matter of getting a contractor to go in and actually install it. And installing a signal, all of the conduit, the pedestals, all of the equipment that would be necessary to plug into would actually be built up front as part of the driveway, so you wouldn't have to rip up the road again. And so once you meet that warrant, it's just a matter of going, okay, get the contractor out here and literally have that equipment installed. And there is an order lead time to that, I will say. Signal equipment lead times are typically about 6 months, so you'd have to, get on that, and the monitoring would indicate when you're even getting close to that. So there would be sufficient time to place the order and to have the equipment installed so that it matched up with when you actually got it or warranting the signal.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on that, on the signal. So coming out of CVS going east on Pulaski, the signal changes are only triggered, I think I heard, by somebody sitting in CVS wanting to go east on Pulaski. Is that
Right, or the opposing road, and I can't think of the name of it right now.
I believe. Okay.
Sorry.
So currently today, if you're in CVS parking lot, and I guess the question is, has anybody contacted CVS about this change, proposed change?
Wouldn't be any need to. It
Wouldn't
wouldn't.
CVS, I'd be upset if you were doing this.
So it doesn't change how that driveway functions. It changes how the Pulaski.
Let me go with that, okay? Okay. Because if you sit in CVS parking lot on a Saturday, okay, and it only triggers when someone's sitting there, and you're trying to go east on Pulaski as an example, and then you said it goes the same way the other way, but it's east on Pulaski. You come out of that, you gotta wait, first of all, for the light to change, and there's a cycle time for that. Then it changes while you're sitting in CVS parking lot. Then you take that turn onto Pulaski, and you have to continue, you have to be the first car, first of all, to make it out of CVS and through the Pulaski Payne Street intersection, going anywhere. If you're lucky. If you're the first one, and that's if you are aggressive. I'll use the word aggressive. If you're the second car, you're not making it through. Is that your experience? Yes. That's two people on this board that have experienced that, and I experienced it many times. So thank you for using the word aggressive. You do have to be. You have to be aggressive. I mean, that's the only way to say it. And that, I don't know how long that light has been there, but I'd be questioning how many years and how many decades that light has been there. I don't think it's been that long. Ralph, do you remember a light there
I
years
think
back?
the improvements to Crook's Corner occurred back
It
in,
was like 12 years ago.
I was,
Yeah.
I moved here and see.
So that, the reason there's a light there is to facilitate the other project that is there already. So I guess my question to our peer review is that what happens to this intersection when you have one car come being aggressive to get across Pulaski, the second car, and that's the current state. Now, if we get rid of the queuing to clear the difference, you're getting rid of that 20 seconds. And it's the 20 seconds to get across Payne Street in Pulaski. You get rid of that 20 seconds. What happens to all those cars coming, trying to get out of CVS?
So I can
Because you
explain,
can't clear the intersection.
right, so I can explain how that works.
Please do.
So right now, there's CVS is on stop. You're stopped there. It's a red ball.
Yep.
And the left turns are occurring at the signal.
Yep.
Right. And then CVS gets a call, the signal gets a call. It
Yeah.
detects that you're there.
Yeah.
It then goes on.
Yeah.
Right. And then you proceed, and then there's an additional 20 seconds to clear. The rephasing would simply take when the CVS signal goes green and tie it to the phase that is clearing the left turns at the signal.
There's the 20 seconds coming out of CVS.
Yes.
Does that 20 seconds clear the intersection coming out from CVS across Pulaski and Payne Street? That's what clears that road to get across that intersection, what one car can do today. That's what it does, right? So you're proposing taking that 20 seconds out, that you have to be aggressive coming out of CVS to get across the way.
We're gonna give it at least that same amount of time, but in a different phase of the signal. Right now, it's on a separate phase, right? So
I guess I'd like to, can you kind of explain that a little bit more? Because
clocking.
go right ahead.
You talk about the phasing and the 20 seconds. I want to put it in like reality.
Mhm.
I can probably count on one hand number of times I've taken a left out of CVS and gotten through that light when it has stayed green. By the time I get to the intersection, it has turned yellow. I literally think I can count one or two times.
So,
And then, that's anytime, Saturday morning, Thursday night, whatever. I do think they're 12 years old. How outdated do you think that phasing is?
it's never been optimized. Let me put it
Okay.
that way. So I guess what I would say is if you look at this as a system, right? What we're trying to do, we're not saying that delays won't happen, and there may be times when you can't make the entire intersection when you're coming out of CVS, but you're balancing the efficiency of a handful of cars that are coming out of CVS with the hundreds of cars that need to wait for a green light traveling on Payne Street. Someone's going to win, right?
I understand
And
that.
so what we're saying is that the one or two vehicles per cycle that are coming out of CVS, right?
That should like an hour sometimes.
Yeah, it probably does. But that's one or two per cycle versus the hundreds, that are occurring at plants. So what we're trying to do is allocate the green time in the system so that it has the best benefit for the highest number of vehicles.
Okay,
That's what we're trying to do. So we're not trying to, we don't want the tail wagging the dog is the best way to put it.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Can I just, one quick thing I wanted to ask. So at CVS, if you're coming out of there taking a left, with all this rephasing, would that, if you're sitting at CVS now with the rephasing, would that red light be as long as you have to wait for it now, or would it be
It
short?
would be actually less time because the cycle length actually can be reduced overall for the signal. The number of times that the CVS signal gets called won't change. If anything, it might be even slightly less time because the cycle length can be reduced.
I only ask because I've sat at that light And I've actually looked at it saying, is this friggin' thing broke? Because it turned green, and when it does turn green, you have to.
Yeah.
flash.
The other,
Turns red again.
the other aspect of what we have discussed with the company that puts this in.
Yeah.
Is there's what they call video detection there, right? It's a visual detection of vehicles as opposed to a loop. And there are aspects of the cameras that they use right now that can probably be improved in terms of how sensitive they are. Or how sensitive they may not be. So that's a maintenance item, and that's something that we did discuss with
Okay,
the.
did we have a comment from?
I just wanted to try and clarify that, from what I understand, the intention of that signal has never been for people to get out of CVS and get through Pulaski in one green light. The clearance interval isn't to get people all the way through, it's to get rid of any queue that would be blocking the intersection at CVS. And so right now, there's a separate clearance interval that goes through there. So essentially, you're getting, within one cycle, you're getting 2 times where you get a left turn going eastbound. That's where the inefficiency is. If the CVS is allowed out when that left turn is already happening as part of the signal, then you still get that clearance, you still get out there. No one's getting through both. That's not the intention of that clearance interval. It's to give you a place to go. I mean, they will if they're aggressive, granted, but that's not what it was intended to be from what I can tell.
To follow up on your question, Ron, if you've got 6 cars sitting in CVS waiting to get out, and that's a realistic situation. And today what happens is that you sit there, it detects that you've got a car there. It says, okay, wait a few, wait until it's time, and then what happens is it lets you take your turn and lets the other cars behind you take your turn. The cars behind you today, because they've cleared out the rest of it, are allowed to get onto Pulaski and not backed up into CVS. So it clears the CVS parking lot basically in that time frame. But it puts it onto Pulaski in a way that between the difference between the driveway at CVS and that intersection, I mean, I don't know if your analysis looked at how many queuing spots that are there. But today it clears that out so that you've got a fresh queue, my understanding. So now you've got a fresh queue, the light changes in CVS and allows that to move in. I think I wasn't around back 12 years ago, but to me that feels like what they were trying to design.
So yeah, and the way it operates now is essentially you're getting that left turn movement twice per cycle. So it clears out, then other traffic comes in, then it clears out again, and then CVS can go, essentially. So
Once every 2.
once every 2 times it clears out. So there's the opportunity of effectively where it's already good and cleared out when it has its typical left turn, to let CVS go at that time, shorten the entire cycle length, and then more cars can get through more frequently.
Okay, while we're still on this topic, and I'm going to piggyback on the piggyback now. My concern is that I've mentioned, we're not taking back the prior meetings on traffic. I talked about the fact if you're traveling on Pulaski going southwest, okay, so we're going the other direction now. Today, anytime between 4:30 to whatever time through rush hour, there's a queue that goes all the way back, sometimes all the way to Hartman Street, which is quite a bit back where where we've got schools and ball fields and everything else in town. And that's the current situation today. So I would be concerned if we are reducing the number of capacity of the cars on Pulaski because we need to adjust them to 126, or excuse me, to Main Street exit people. And now you've got, I'm concerned that the queuing is going to go further up Pulaski, past Hartman, all the way up to even further.
So this would actually, in my opinion, have the opposite. So right now, if you go and stand at CVS and watch the cycles, you'll have 2 left turns where the westbound traffic has to stop and allow for any potential left turns. I watched it multiple times where there were no vehicles taking that left turn. It was only giving that left turn because of the CVS parking lot.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of time right now where the westbound traffic is stopped for no one to take a left turn. And so by combining those two left turn cycles together, there'd be shorter cycles, so more often the westbound traffic would be able to come through.
At the Pulaski and Main Street
Exactly.
intersection.
Yep.
So, so you're not clearing the queue there.
And you would have
what you're
one less
saying.
yellow and red time as well.
Yeah, you're not clearing the queue when you're asking the CVS people to move.
Right, instead you're using when the queue is already cleared
Yeah.
anyway. The queue already clears anyway for that left turn movement, so you do the CVS parking lot then. Instead of having a separate one later that stops the westbound traffic for sometimes no one taking left turns.
Okay. All right, thank you for the input. So, where were we on this side? Bill, were you up next?
Yeah, a few comments that I want to hold specifically questions to the next meeting. But when you do this analysis, really look into extending the time frame when it goes from yellow to red into green on the opposite side. Because people in South Bellingham have a habit of running red lights because of delay in the traffic. So I think we have to extend, and I don't know what you call that period,
Yeah, signal
White
clearance,
period.
yeah, the clearance phase, yeah.
but I think you need to extend that.
Yeah, and that's a common thing, for exactly the reason that you mentioned is that you want to make sure that vehicles properly clear the intersection. The standard clearance time is 4 seconds of yellow time and 2 all red. So it's 6 seconds typically.
Yep.
And it's not uncommon for certain applications like that to have 4 seconds all red clear, for instance.
Okay,
So that's something that could easily be added to and adjusted in the signal, either remotely by the signal contractor or in field.
okay. I also think, drivers are like water. They tend to find the path of least resistance when they want to go somewhere. And I'm talking about Elbow Street. I think over time, you said it was a small percentage, less than 1%. Explain that to the people that live on Elbow Street. That 1% impacts their lifestyle, right? So that's what they want to get into more down the road. I do think, and we agree, we need some upgrade on the signalization at that intersection. Because on a Friday night, coming down South Main Street, it backs up to Cartier's Funeral Home often. And just not on Friday nights. And as Phil said, it backs up to Harper Street as well. You talked about a short-term solution of putting markings in the pavement in front of the fire station. People ignore those. I mean, they ignore them right now on South Main Street. Any way we could put a signal there? I'm not saying a stop signal,
Right.
just a light that reminds people fire station 100 feet down the road. Is that ever done?
Typically, a fire station would be located along a straight flat, well, not necessarily straight or flat, but along a section of roadway that's further from an intersection.
Correct.
And that's part of the issue.
Okay,
Fire stations, and we've designed these systems, will have a preemption signal often at the station so that if there's a call, they can hit the preemption button and anyone approaching the station from either side has to stop so that that vehicle, vehicles can get out of there, right? That's the typical signal control that you would put at a fire station. Station one, which has limited amount of equipment, right? It doesn't have a ladder truck. I think it might have a pumper truck and an ambulance, and that's it. What we've seen, and we've done video of the intersection to understand how it functions. People actually do regularly stop, on Payne, and they allow that movement to happen, right? So we've watched hours of video, and that does regularly happen even without the markings. Um, Placing additional signal controls is difficult because of where the driveways are for the station. They're so close to the intersection. So the most effective way, as a practical matter, in the worst case, if you're leaving the station, and the chief can speak to this, they have experience, day to day with this. They have the ability to do one of two movements out of there if they need to make a left. They can either go across the road, or the center line, take a left on a pane, or they can use the inbound lane of Rentham and just get around. I mean, there are a couple of options, and if you look at the actual video of the intersection, which we have, there are plenty of gaps there for that to happen, right? So I'm not seeing the immediate need for any kind of specialized traffic control per se. I do think it's appropriate to put the markings in just to reinforce, where people should be stopping so they know I shouldn't be parked here. If I see a red light, I'm not going anywhere. Just stop before you get over these markings. And, I know on occasion people do ignore those. I'm not saying they don't, but as a rule, we've seen people actually do. That gap is typically provided in that striped area. So that's what we're suggesting. We think that's appropriate. We've done many of those in many communities. They are effective. But yeah, to answer your question about signal controls, it's just
because of the spacing.
but yes, the spacing makes it really difficult for
Okay.
signals.
Any of those are my comments. I'll probably have more specific questions based on Robert's request at the next meeting.
My request.
That was an interesting comment though about the signal and what happens when the alarm goes off and signal stop lights and all that stuff.
I'm offended by the implication that South Bellingham drivers run red light.
Let me just say, let me have a word.
Okay. Yeah, so a couple of just quick things. The queuing is still a concern on Payne Street for me, even though the phasing, and I understand it, and I get the whole left out of CVS, the other signal's already single, so it's moving everything and getting everything into the queues and it's helping. My concern is, and we're going back September meeting, I believe I asked you folks of a similar project with in the queuing of similar area, and you gave me the Westboro location, which is Lyman Street, which Lyman Street is 5 lanes wide. Okay, there's 3 coming southbound and 2 going northbound on Lyman Street.
Are you talking about Del Webb in Westboro?
You guys gave me you guys told me where, and I went up there. So I'm on Lyman Street looking at it.
Yeah.
And I'm watching the queuing there. And with 3 lanes coming from there, any time of the day, I've gone several different times, you have anywhere from 18 to 27 cars deep, 6 to 9 in a light cycle on 3 lanes. So now you do reduce it to 2, you're gaining 12 to 18 cars a cycle. 18 cars is going to put you past Rentham Road if you go down into South Bellingham. If you pace it off, and I've done it, because I literally have stopped at Lyman Street, get out of the car, and I walked it down, and then I went down to South, and I walked it, and I said, there's no way in hell, if we get 18 cars, you're into Rentham Road. Now you're doing back up onto Rentham and everything else. That's a real concern, that similar project, and then you give me, and we only have 2 lanes.
So just to clarify, what we did, what we provided to the board and what I showed at the last hearing was the traffic generation for the Del Webb property. We didn't do or make any statements relative to the signal you're mentioning, which is at Route 9, I believe.
Right.
Which is more than half a mile away, right? And it has a whole different volume characteristic. It's a whole different scenario.
Well, I asked for a similar sized project and you guys gave me that, so that's why I used, now you're looking at queuing.
Yeah, so we're not
right down the street from that said project.
So I apologize if it was confusing when we presented it, but what we were trying to do is indicate a project that had similar size so that you could, we could, we
Which
quantify how much traffic was
similar
being
traffic, correct?
for the development, not the intersection at Route 9. So we presented, and it's on the slide, the trip activity for Del Webb relative to industry standards for 55 and over development. We've demonstrated that there's a high consistency and that we've used that as a basis for estimating traffic for this property. So the comparison was never intended to talk about intersection operations. The comparison was to, here's another 55 and over development. Here's how much traffic it generates in real life and how it compares to industry standards. That was what we presented at the last hearing. So
Okay, so, but me going and looking at that location, Lyman Street is not as populated as Payne Street. It's less popular. From your development down, there's relatively no houses.
well, I disagree, but it's apples and oranges in terms of the signal.
But you're talking about volume coming out of your complex
Yes.
and going down to that light. So I'm just standard counting cars. And it's astronomical when you have 18 to 27 cars on a light cycle. Again, you've now three lanes down to two, and it's back. I'm concerned with the Payne and Rentham Road that may even need a light there
Right.
to
So just
create proper trafficking.
yeah, just to be clear for the record, our office is close to the signal that you're mentioning, and that cycle length and that signal is almost twice what the cycle length is on the one that we're talking about here at Pulaski Boulevard. They're apples and oranges. They operate differently, and they have a much higher volume scenario at Lyman and Route 9 than the intersection at Pulaski. So it wouldn't be fair comparison to show what queuing exists in another community at a much higher volume intersection that has a much larger cycle length to Pulaski. They're absolutely different locations, they're different volumes, they're different signal operations, they're different cycle lengths.
Unfortunately, and I apologize that if you construed my question, when we were talking about queuing, Payne Street and everything, and I asked for a similar project, and that's what I was given. So then I went and did some analysis, and now you're telling me, no, take that and throw it out the window. But you gave me a complex that I could use as a comparison. So that be that, so we can continue, discuss that maybe a little more.
Okay.
The warning of the signal at the entryway.
Yes.
You did confirm the infrastructure is installed once the entryway is put in. My concern is that that light should be installed immediately upon the entranceway going in because of the amount of traffic coming up and down Payne Street. And you have all the construction vehicles, all the trucks going in and out. We had a development right here on 140, the apartment buildings that were put there. That created an absolute astronomical problem with traffic. So I would say that light is warranted from the get-go because of the amount of construction crews that go in and out. I mean, once you start the first foundation, it's a sea of ants every morning at 6 o'clock.
You're referring to the construction activity, right? So
absolutely.
That period of time would be subject to a construction management plan. And it wouldn't be unusual to have a police detail on Payne Street during the construction hours.
Have the infrastructure and put the light in.
Yeah, so
because then you start seeing more true traffic patterns too, because people going in and out at the peak hours.
So just to be clear, there are warrants, there are volume thresholds that by regulation have to be met before you can put in a signal. It's not discretionary.
Can we see a copy of those warrants?
Yeah, they're actually in the manual on uniform traffic control devices. It's a manual that is referenced by Mass DOT. Mass DOT actually has jurisdiction over every signal in the Commonwealth unless a community or a designer is professionally registered, in which case they defer to that registered engineer for the application of the signal. But the regulations obligate that one or more warrants have to be met to justify the installation of a signal. Signals, are intended to balance delays, and for lower volume conditions, it would be unfair and unbalanced to necessarily stop a lot of people for very little benefit, based on volume, side street volume. So it's not something that any professional engineer could actually do until and unless the warrants are met. So it's not discretionary. It's not something you can say, I think it's a good idea to put in a signal. You have to meet those criteria.
You have to meet the level.
Yeah, you do. And there are different thresholds. There's safety criteria. There are volume criteria for hourly, 4-hour and 8-hour warrants. There's a whole series of warrants that need to be looked at. And, John, if you want to.
Sure, yeah, I would just like to point out that, we would we would very much discourage putting it in prior to being warranted. If the town were to, approve that through the select board, have it installed prior to being warranted, that is a substantial liability that the town's taking on having an unwarranted signal placed in. But that would be strongly recommended against putting it in prior to warranting.
Okay, just to piggyback on it though, we have had construction projects here in town that has had detailed police officers for 2 periods of time, I believe it was. It was at the rush hour in the morning and also rush hour at night.
2 4-hour
And
periods.
there were 2 4-hour periods that ran through the entire construction period but a substantial amount of the construction period until the lights were put in. I'll put it that way. I'm not sure.
Well, the lights were in at one point, and they weren't functioning until they hit that threshold.
Correct.
So it was about almost 2 years,
About the same, yeah.
and it was something the developer agreed to at the outset.
So that was a successful project if,
Yes.
at least it wasn't, didn't create problems. Oh, maybe I shouldn't qualify that. I'd say it was an experience that we had that was a positive one.
I think there was a little bit more to that one because there was the 2 projects that were in tandem but on different construction schedules.
The second one came in after the first one was permanent though, right? So if I remember correctly.
I don't know which one lined up with what. I didn't, it was
Yeah.
before my
And
time.
there were 2 boards involved too, so it was.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, and the only other items I'll defer until public safety is here because it
Yeah.
ties into Bellingham Road area and the fire station. So get their input.
Okay. All right, then I do have a couple of questions here. So I think I heard the applicant basically say that flattening out the road near the signal light on Payne Street was being proposed and was preferred. Is that what your take is on this as well?
Yeah, we prefer to have that raised section lowered down. If there is a protected left turn I'm sorry, an unprotected left turn, someone approaching coming up that raise versus someone coming down, we want to make sure that if they haven't fully slowed down, they're not turning in while someone's in that invisible spot, essentially.
So taking that little
Bringing that,
bump or whatever you want to call that thing.
Yep.
Oh, is
bringing that.
preferred, did I get that right on your side?
It is preferred, it is preferred, and
From a safety and the process and everything else?
Is that near the top of the hill?
No, near the light.
it's near the bottom of the hill. It's a little
Okay.
A small crest curve.
hill.
We brought that last.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we took a close look at that. We have an exhibit that actually shows that if you're in the left turn lane, at the point at which you're going to turn from that left turn into the site meets the standard without changing that crest, right? That we've met that standard, but clearly it's better to have a lower profile and the design, and we believe that we can lower it somewhere around 6 inches as part of the reconstruction of that piece of the road. The thought occurred to me that once a signal actually goes in, you mentioned exclusive phasing for left turns. One of the ways to address that as well would be to have an exclusive left turn phase where everyone has to stop to allow that left turn to proceed. So there's ways to program the signal itself as well. To eliminate any possibility of a conflict between someone traveling north and someone making the left. So there's a couple of ways to handle it, but the crest is something that ideally gets lowered, and that's the intention in the proposal at this point. Whether it's 4 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches is subject to the engineering design that will follow.
Okay, but that's the, we're both on the same page.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and obviously, okay, great, so let's keep going, I'll comment on the safety audit, and I'm agreeing with our peer review, and the reason I'm agreeing with our peer review that it should be done ahead of time was because I heard the applicant team basically say that, not to handle, they wouldn't be handling the structural improvements if needed. Signs and little things like that were okay, but if there was something major that came up from this project, they wouldn't be included, they wouldn't want to do that, so I'm supporting what our peer review is recommending on that. There's a couple things I have on hold. I'll make another comment. I'm still concerned about the signs, even with the discussions that we had the last time. There are a lot of signs still up there now, and we still have issues up there. So the signage, I'm still concerned on the signage, the additional signage that's going to be added. If you drive down from Woonsocket in Bellingham, there's yellow arrows all over the place, and I did spent a lot of time trying to look at what you're proposing, and I'm still concerned with the proposals. Next item that hasn't been touched, I'll actually piggyback on Steve's comment about the takings and the land and all that stuff. I would like to see a drawing of what you guys are proposing, putting in a sidewalk, and whether it's with the town or not, I would like to see a drawing showing the current road, what you're saying the right of way is, okay, and what the takings would be to do the plan to put those sidewalks in. I'd like that defined. I mean, I think right now, I've heard that, that you want to do it as a part of the town doing the taking and all that stuff. I'm not going as far as that right now, but I would like to see what that would entail from a more practical point of view. If you're saying the road's not where it should be, and I'm not disputing it, I'm saying, show us where it is today, where you think it should be, and what properties would need to have takings on it, and which are, the public way to support the sidewalk that you showed on the drawings today. I think that's a fair question.
Mr. Chairman, and I'll just say, and I'm sure we can do that work just as, in a spirit of collaboration, partnership, but just to be clear, we are not requesting to put the sidewalk in.
Yeah, I'll, it's a requirement, sidewalks are a requirement of our bylaws, whether they're out on the street or not. And it's a proposal that you guys have put forward with drawings with the sidewalk. So I'm gonna say that I would like to see a drawing that correlates with what you're showing me on the screen, that you're presenting to me, that has a sidewalk on it. And I'm being told that there's gonna be takings, there's public way that is may not fall under takings. I'd like that defined. Okay, I think that's a fair statement.
Just so that I'm clear.
Yeah.
Chair, so the concept plan that we've shown, which is the orange section on that map, does define the right of way for the existing roads based on actual survey.
I'd like to,
Yeah.
I'd like a little bit, that's a little too far away. If we could I'd like a presentation on something that I can see that reminds me of when I drive down Main Street.
Yeah.
What it looks like.
Right, so, so that I'm clear.
Yeah.
So we have a very detailed exhibit that
Okay.
shows what you're asking for.
Right.
In the orange area.
Yeah.
Right, so that, we've done that.
Good.
The section that's shown in the bubble on that diagram
Okay,
is existing sidewalk. That, there's a continuous way to get from the site to
and is
Pulaski.
that gonna be part of the improvements that you're looking to make as part of this project?
The commitment that the developer is making right now is to, during the design phase of the intersection at this, at the driveway.
Yeah.
They will secure additional survey and as part of the design, include that gapped area, the sidewalk in that area, and identify improvements, the reconstruction of that sidewalk, right? And what we're saying is that there may be portions of that sidewalk that aren't entirely, they're 4 feet wide instead of 5, for instance. Are they ADA compliant? 4 feet is an ADA compliant standard, but should they be 5 feet? Yeah, that'd be nice. But to get to 5 feet might mean that you gotta go a foot over someone's property line to do so. So,
That's what I would like to understand, because
Yeah.
that's the conversation we were having today.
yeah,
And I just want it documented, and I'd like to review it so that we understand what we're all talking about.
right. So the only concern I would say is that, in the ordinary course, a commitment like that becomes a condition of approval of our project, where the developer is then spending a lot more money to go and get survey and identify, do a layout of the sidewalk,
Mhm.
identify the easement or taking areas.
Mhm.
That's part of an engineering design exercise that, quite frankly, costs a lot of money. Yeah, I think the commitment right now is they'll take care of the design. They'll identify the appropriate areas, if any, that would require the taking or easement. And to the extent those takings and easements are necessary, they can't do that.
No,
That
I
has to be
agree,
decided.
I
Yeah.
agree, the taking is different,
Right.
but I want it defined. I don't want this being a hypothetical, and what are we talking about, is what I want this to, I mean, I want to see it on a piece of paper, what's going on. It's like,
Mr. Chair, can I just add in
Jump
for
in.
1 second?
please,
So I agree with you completely, because the hypotheticals has, gotten the town into some issues. We look at the cross street improvements as an example of this exact situation occurring. But that occurred because there was the conceptual layout and figures and not exactly the constructability with good survey, with good design that occurred because they wanted to do it before, or the board required before the approval. I think in this case, it makes more sense to do it a full bore design survey, making sure ADA compliance occurs. And that is a significant lift from the engineer standpoint. And I agree with Bob in this case that because we want so much detail, it would make a lot more sense to condition it so we get the detail rather than looking at conceptual points at this point in the project.
is there a midway in between?
Yeah, I mean,
Because, when we looked at pictures from the top of the hill,
Mhm.
and I say, well, look, that pine tree's sitting there, and you won't be able to see the signal from the pine tree. The pine tree, that was discussion we had, and the response was, well, it's in the public way. And I'm like, okay, so now I'm asking for a little bit more meat on some of this stuff.
I hear what you're saying. I just don't want to repeat the same situation as the cross street situation, which I think is what you are trying to avoid as well.
Exactly,
I'm just
because
saying
we
that,
didn't do our homework ahead of time. Exactly. Yeah,
Well-
I'm agreeing with you.
well, the developer did not do
Agreed,
homework ahead
agreed.
of time because they
generous.
they were showing the conceptual layout of the sidewalk and not really the constructability of it,
Yeah,
which is why it's good to have, the developer actually take care of the design of said sidewalk rather than just show conceptual layout that hopefully will work. So, maybe we could table this to And maybe you can actually get some feedback too from the DPW.
Yep.
Next meeting.
So, before, I'd like to understand it better, so that's what I'm looking for. The last comment I'll make is that I heard the discussion was turning out of your project, turning east on Rentham Road, and I guess what I'm concerned about is that intersection still coming the other way. And I guess I'd like to ask our peer review if we have looked at what this project's going to do when you turn out of Rentham Road going onto Payne Street. And the concern I have is right now, there's a lot of queuing there as it is on in normal time. So by adding additional cars there, I mean, the project that's coming, what does that do to that intersection? I think it's, we're gonna hold the conversation about public safety, but I think there's gonna be some conversation also, probably, maybe we'll hold it until next time. That intersection, just from the public's point of view, is it has a large queue that, quite frankly, I go the other way. Any hour that's not even close to peak, I skip that intersection as much as I can because and the concern is that does doing this project add more queuing there? And I guess if that's not an answer you can answer right now, then we'll hold it, but I'll let you.
Well, so you're saying turning right at the fire station.
Coming up, coming from the project, coming out of their back gate that they're talking about without, what's a public safety thing, but the one we were taking on the thing, but I'm giving you directions. Coming from there towards the fire station, and then say turning either, you can go either way on coming on Rentham Road onto our project plan road.
Yeah.
So do you have that available right now as far as, is that a concern that's should be looked into, or is that
That's gonna be directly impacted by the queuing from the signal at Pulaski Boulevard. So that queues back past through there, that queue goes both directions essentially, right? So as that queue,
yeah,
according with those changes, the queue from Pulaski is going to be reduced, so it should help it to some extent, but it is still, like, the issue doesn't fully go away, but it improves as long as the queuing from Pulaski improves. So it's not getting worse. It may get a little bit better. I wouldn't put too much stock into getting substantially better, but it wouldn't be getting worse if the queuing improves when we have Pulaski.
okay. So when we talk about the CVS situation, it was the CVS situation. I'll say it from my interpretation was basically we were taking the queuing, we were taking the 20 seconds, improving part of that signal by reallocating it to the other road. Does that do the same thing? So you're saying we're not gonna make that intersection worse?
Right.
It's gonna be part of the improvements in the rest of it.
Yep, because once that amount of time comes out of that, because you're now having CVS exit when it's naturally clearing anyway, so there's less overall signal time. So that means that every approach is getting a green light more frequently at Pulaski Boulevard.
Okay, so let me just make sure that I'm on the same page. So this isn't actually Pulaski Boulevard, this is further up. And there's two ways to go when you come out of that Rentham Road. There's the right and the left. So when you take your left, you get across the lane of traffic that now is going to be moving more often, where before it was stopped. It used to be having, the stop sign that used to be there recently at the bottom of the hill by the stop sign, by the fire station, there used to be a stop sign there to stop the kid, to control that has gone away in the last 5 years. So that'll be a conversation that'll come up again. But you're saying the overall queuing from that street without public safety, without excluding the effects of the fire station should get better. Is what your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Right and left.
My thought would be that would improve overall, there's less, to intersection.
Okay.
I believe that was included in the initial, study and the level of service. I don't have that on me right now, but there was a level of service provided for that.
Okay.
So we could look at what that was specifically, but that should have been updated with the new one as well, and I believe it was improving overall.
Good, okay. Like hearing the word improve. All right, those are my questions. At this point, we typically will open it up to the public. We've covered a lot of area. The public's asked a lot of questions of the past. I'd like to try to refrain from bringing up topics that we've already engaged in, unless you've got a different view, or it's something that hasn't come up at a previous meeting, if that's okay. We want input. We love input. We learn things when there's input. We discuss things. We look at things with different angles when there's input. So at this point, sir, you get your hand up. You could stand up, list your name for the record, and
Douglas Smith, 10 Janet Ave. I believe we're still talking about 800 two-bedroom units, which rationally means there's going to be a minimum of 1,600 parking spaces, not including property manager spaces or any of those other conditions, visitors, what have you. So we're talking potentially 1,800 vehicles increase. And we're talking about a paved cow path, Main Street. This is not a rational proposal. If this was a rational proposal, these people would have proposed a 4-lane road from Diamond Hill Road through like the former Lowe's into their property. That would be a minimum. It wouldn't be good, but it would be a minimum to access what they're talking about. This is not rational. Changing the signal timing does not solve the problem. Tweaking Main Street does not solve the problem. It is a major problem that requires a major input-output for that level of development. If you want to create a nightmare, then go ahead with this. But I would ask the board to think rationally about what this would cause and what the problems would be. This is not a serious proposal. I have been in a lot of meetings in other towns about proposals. This is not serious. This is a joke. And if people are willing to accept this insanity, putting on a cow path, that kind of development, that's a huge site. I can understand developers want, if I was involved in that, I would want a bigger development than they're talking about. But there is not access. Even Diamond Hill Road would have trouble handling this. This needs a resolution that is not dropping cars on Main Street, tweaking traffic lights, and playing with Main Street. That's nuts. It's just plain nuts. And I hope the board realizes the insanity of this. Thank you.
All right. Is there another question to the board that we haven't heard, ma'am?
Yeah, Linda Pino, 8 Rayfield Circle. I've been coming to all of these meetings. I'm sure you know my face by now. And I do have a question about the site. I got several questions because I've been taking notes all night. One of the questions I have has to do with the sidewalks that you're proposing on Main Street. How are the sidewalks going to be on both sides of the road, or are we just talking about one side of the road? As it is now, there is no sidewalks that I know that are on, if you're going up Main Street, there are no sidewalks on the left side. Okay, there's only sidewalks on the right side, which means that anybody who would possibly think about living in that project would now have to cross a busy street and at the crosswalk at the light hoping that people are going to stop and not run the red light. And then they would end up having to go and do their business, either walk up Main Street or walk down towards the firehouse. So that's one of the concerns I have is what, if it's only going to be on one side, that could pose a problem. The other thing is in the winter, when the sidewalks are covered with snow, or even the throw of the snow from the plows onto the sidewalk. Now you've got a problem because if the DPW or the town does not clear those sidewalks because the people who live in front of those sidewalks are not going to clear them. Now you've got people walking in the street on a very, very busy hill. How many deaths is it going to take to realize that this is a death trap? Think about it. Think about it. And if there are any children who are now walking up and down those streets, what do you think about that? How many people have to get hurt before we realize we've got a problem? The other thing I was listening to as well is that the people that are coming down Main Street today, coming down Main Street, going up towards the firehouse. Now, if that light is red at the intersection of Pulaski and Rentham Street, which is that little section between the firehouse and Pulaski Boulevard, the people actually block, and they don't think about the people that are trying to get out of Rentham Road to either take a right or to take a left. Because I go down, I'm in that intersection a lot. When you're coming down Main Street, people will just block that entire intersection and just sit there.
Yeah, I think that
Not
was
allow
my
you.
concern with the last question
Yeah.
I was asking. So
Yep.
I think what I heard was that it would improve slightly.
Like
It's still a
signal
problem,
thing is not
it's
gonna
still a
work.
problem,
Yeah,
but
it's
it's
not gonna
gonna
work.
improve.
You're talking about reality and how people react and what people will allow. People are not courtesy. They don't have any courtesy to allow anybody to get by anything.
Mhm.
Let's be real about this, okay? The other day, was it last week? I was in that intersection. The traffic was blocked from all the way into Payne. I had two lanes coming out of Rentham Road, one to go up Payne Street, one to take a right to go towards the major intersection. I was coming in from Pulaski to take a left onto Rentham Road. And I sat there for at least 2, 3, 4 minutes. And what happened while I was there, I was the first car to take a left. I couldn't get by. So what happened? The fire truck, the rescue was trying to come out of the firehouse.
Place to go.
He didn't have anywhere to go because the entire intersection was clogged. So you know what I had to do? I had to cut in front of the emergency vehicle to allow at least my vehicle to get out of the way. It was a laughing stock. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. So that's another thing. The other thing that I also wrote about is the backlog of cars. Now you're talking about how many cars will go through each queue. A lot of it depends on how quickly the driver moves his car. If you notice in some cases when you're in line and the light switches, the lights turn, there are times where you'll see a space of a car between a driver and the next car. So are you considering that as well? I mean, you're probably thinking about cars that as the light moves, that they're all moving at the same time. Well, they're not. In reality, people take their sweet time and then they gun it when they realize that there's a big space between me and the guy in front of me. So you got to think about that in your study. The other thing too is that on Payne Street, there's Elbow Street and there's Irving. And I know it for a fact because if I don't want to go through the intersection at the firehouse, I take and I cut through Irving and Elbow. If the traffic coming down Payne is extremely busy, I will sit at the corner of either one of those two streets for at least 5 minutes, if not longer, waiting for my opportunity to take a left to go up Payne Street, because now I'm contending with traffic coming down and traffic going up. So now you've got traffic that's going to be backlogged on those two side streets. Now, if you put a light just up the road at where the project driveway is proposed, that traffic on those two side streets is now going to back up because you've got the traffic stopped to allow the people out of the project to come out into the oncoming traffic. So you're going to end up with more cars, more congestion. Okay? Then, this is the other thing I had too. Every time, I mean, these are some of the concerns that I have as a citizen that goes up and down those streets constantly. And now we're talking about the resurgence of Walnut Hill Plaza. You know what's going to happen is that when that supermarket comes in, you're going to see all of the people, especially with the new store. Women like new stores. We do. So what's going to happen is that when the grand opening happens, especially because this is a store that's not in this area, people are going to swarm from Woonsocket and Blackstone and South Bellingham to this new store. And the traffic that's going to be going up and down Payne Street, and we're not even talking about the 800 units and the 1,600 cars. What's that going to do to Payne Street? Think about it. Think about it. I'm just one citizen. I can't be the only one who's been taking notes and identifying these issues. And the other thing I was thinking about too is that with the project going in, does that mean we're going to have a new fire station at the south end of town? I thought I saw something or I heard maybe the possibility of a new station being built where the old restaurant used to be, right across the street from the station.
How's that gonna help?
So now, how are we going to get a ladder truck or a big fire truck out of that piece of land to come out into the congestion of what's now a nightmare? How's that going to happen? What redesign is going to happen at that intersection in order to avoid my house from being burnt down to the ground when it catches fire? Or even a 3 or 4 story building in this project that's going up in flames, and you got to get the ladder truck up there to try and save people. And if it's an over 55 project, how many people on the 3rd and 4th or even 2nd floor are going to be in walkers, wheelchairs, and whatever, that they can't get down the stairs?
Yeah, I think what we're gonna do is talk about public safety like that with
This
the
is
fire.
public safety.
Yes,
Especially with the
when the
fire.
chiefs would agree with you. And
Yep.
I think a
Thank
lot
you.
of these concerns that you're talking about will be discussed with the fire chief and
And I'll
police
be
chief
here for that.
in the room.
Yep.
And I think that they're experts in the field. And
That would be wonderful.
we look forward to hearing
Yep.
their input on it, and
Yep.
we take your concerns seriously. So
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Because this is serious. This is really, really serious.
There's a lot of
It's
concerns.
not just the traffic, because that's all we talk about is the traffic. Yeah, the traffic is going to be horrendous.
Well, like
There's
Rob
a
said
lot of
earlier,
other
we're
things that have
gonna
to
take
be
a session with
also
public
considered.
safety, and there's a lot of those discussions that'll end up being part of that. We were trying to take today
Okay,
being traffic.
I get it.
But your concerns, I know will come up
Oh, yeah.
when that comes up. And quite frankly, back in March, I brought some of it up myself, so with them in the room, so.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ma'am, any new concerns that we haven't really addressed
I
yet?
promise you, yes.
Okay, please, your name and.
Lauren Humble, 10 Janet Avenue,
Thank you.
neighbor. And this is a request. So we have heard a lot of anecdotal comments. You talked about revising your route. I've talked about revising my route in the past to avoid Crook's Corner. But there's no data to support that. So I would respectfully request, and that this be reflected in the minutes, that we get baseline data from citizens about changing your route, near misses. It's one thing to have an accident. You can count accidents. So we've spent some time talking about coming out of CVS. If you're coming out of CVS and you go up Payne Street, how many times is there a near miss because someone's taking a left? You don't know they're taking a left, but they get a left-hand arrow. You're in front of urgent care taking a right. Linda was talking about the bottleneck that occurs at the fire station. And I appreciate the developer, you are the developer's consultant, taking video of how often the kindness of citizens, we let each other go. That does happen, but we don't have any data about how often.
Okay, so
Yeah.
as part of this study, there's a traffic study.
Yes.
And the traffic study has core data behind it.
His volume of
Which-
cars. It has volume of cars.
Volume of
It
cars.
doesn't have speed of cars on Elbow Street and Irving. It has number of cars.
I think,
We don't know how fast they go.
there's been some comments about speed in the
Yes.
record and,
Yeah.
and even the peer reviews had that stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
That stuff's all public record, and I think it's probably, how do I phrase this? It's on the scientific side of things too.
Right, but we do need qualitative data. There's quantitative data and there's
Quantitative
qualitative
and
data,
qualitative.
and that needs to happen. If you're
So
hearing this emotional side, but it's content.
it's content,
It's
so.
content. How many near misses? How many times are we changing our routes? How is this impacting today with baselines? And then you can extrapolate out how more it's gonna happen.
Yeah, so I think you've commented about some of the qualitative data.
Yes,
The applicants provided the quantitative
Correct.
data. And I think we're proceeding with the process that there's input coming in as such, and I'm not sure what you're
well, I mean,
proposing.
there could be a survey. You could send out a survey to citizens of Bellingham. So how many near misses have you had at the intersection? How often do you have your heart in your throat? I mean, there's a way to write that in a way that's scientific. But to get information, do you regularly change your route to avoid Crook's Corner?
So, I've done survey work in my professional life.
Yes,
and
as I have done.
you really would want a consultant who is experienced in survey work.
To develop the survey.
Right, so
Yes.
we would need to figure out who's going to do that, who's paying for it.
Right.
I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
it's not scientific.
Well,
Surveys are
it's like a
qualitative,
survey.
like you said.
But it
It's
doesn't
a
require
requirement of
It's,
the special permit process.
yeah, there's a reason why you go with the technical data, because if it's subjective material, there's no way to even tell if it's true.
Well, there is a way, and without spending an hour tonight, there is a way to collect scientific, qualitative data that is usable, that's relevant, that's appropriate. And would be beyond tonight to come up with the design of the study. But I've designed studies. I know that one can do that. You get a Likert scale on a scale of 1 to 5. How often do you do this? How often do you feel that?
It's not really that scientific.
Oh, no, it is science. I mean, people do science. this way.
That's an easy way.
It's not that, it has to be designed, and it's beyond this meeting tonight to talk about it. But I suggest that we think about that, because this feeling stuff is going to keep coming up. Anecdotal evidence is one thing, but data about anecdotal experience is a whole different thing. So anyway, my suggestion is to think about it.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ma'am, you're standing up, there's something you'd like to.
Wanted to bring up two things. My name is Marie Canasi. I live on Rome Avenue. I grew up in Bellingham. I've been on Rome Avenue for 30 years raising my family. the GPS tells you to take Elbow Street and Irving Street when Payne Street is backed up. So how do you account for that? And the other thing, oh, now I can't think of it. I lost it.
It's okay, I bring it up in another meeting.
That comes to me,
So,
so I walk out.
yeah, well, it's okay, it's okay.
that we get emotional about this is part of what we have to get information on that makes it scientific and measurable and, you know, making an informed decision about something so that we're not just all riled up.
Oh, the other thing is, we need to remember, Bellingham is what, 6 miles by 12 miles? And we already have how many apartment places?
Yeah.
How many senior living? How much more do we need? That was young.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do one more from the audience, and then I think we're gonna move on.
Other business.
I would like, Patrick, is there, before we ask this question, you wanna hold I apologize for not.
That's no problem. I have no
There's a lot
comments or
covered.
questions right now.
All right.
So,
I
thank you.
apologize to you first, and then, sir, your name and address and your new comment. I know you've commented in the many meetings of ours, and we appreciate comments, but please, if there's new information, we'd like to focus on that.
Well, I got one question. Rick Campano, 70 Elbow Street.
Thank you.
I got one question for the developer. How much of Payne Street is he gonna straighten out? Is it just gonna put a sidewalk on it and call it a day? Or is they gonna widen the street the way it should have been done and do it correctly?
Well, I guess we'll hold up on it. That was the discussion I was asking about earlier. And I'm not hearing that they're looking to redesign, other than certain elements that we talked about, flattening the road, that we talked about tonight. Both the peer review and the applicant thought that was the best view. I don't think that the project, and correct me if I'm wrong, is looking to redesign all of Payne Street. They're looking to do something that will make their project not make Bellingham.
Don't you think?
Put words in their mouth, but not make things worse. I think, is that a fair assessment, sir? That's the applicant shaking his head. So
Don't you think that straightening out Payne Street before they start building would be the right thing to do? And the other thing is, there's 26 apartments going in at the top of the hill, 26 units.
Yeah.
The blue. So that's gonna be another 50, 60 cars up there. Just to let you know.
That's the
Those blue.
Yeah, that closed recently though, didn't it? Like now.
Yeah, they just approved 26
Yeah.
units in there.
Okay,
So that's gonna be more traffic coming down that street too.
okay, thanks for your comments.
But, you know, I worry about the traffic on Elbow Street, you know, it's where I lived my whole life. You know, and I cannot believe that, you know, you guys are even thinking about letting them build up there. Make them go out the other way. Rentham Road, Woonsocket would be a good one up there, go right out the plazas up there. Would be a good entrance for them, they'll come right through there.
Not rent them.
Well, your comments, sir.
I live on Elbow Street, I'm at the bottom of the hill, so I get all the dump.
Yeah, you do.
Rob,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rob, you were discussing earlier that perhaps tonight we would look at what our future look like. And you mentioned public safety and what would, is there a recommendation on what our next meeting should cover?
Yeah.
Is that a date?
Yeah, so one of the components is the civil peer review that's ongoing. There was some soil testing that was done just recently, so I imagine it's going to be a little bit of turnaround time for the engineer to submit that revised submission, and then ultimately it would be good if when we talk about that, TEC can do the civil peer review, so then we'll have meaningful discussion at that point. So that's a little bit further out, but in the meantime, I think it would be great to discuss the items related to public safety, utilities with, police, fire, DPW, and we could talk about some overarching items too. that, may have been brought up earlier on that just we haven't really revisited. So, and to the applicant's benefit, the board's benefit, and the public's benefit, what I can do is if you recall, I ended up putting together a list of bullet points early on of just initial comments that were discussed. I can kind of dissect that and go through some of the items that we should maybe discuss that are not related to public safety and utilities. And, that way we can have kind of a meaningful discussion. But if we aimed for the first meeting in February 12th, would that work?
That would work for us.
Okay, so
And just to be clear, that's not the public safety or that is?
that is public
It is
safety.
public safety.
Yep, so February 12th, we'll have the chiefs in here, we'll have DPW.
Okay.
Let's try to make that when we're being cognizant of continuances, we'll try to make that a one item agenda, because, even
Okay.
tonight we went, sorry, 9:30, so.
Okay, so one item agenda on the 12th.
If we can try.
Chiefs and-
Yep.
Okay, any other concerns from the board?
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, so motion to continue to February 12th.
Do we know? We have a second, and before I hold on the question, do we have a second? Okay, motion made by Bill, second by Steve. What, being a special permit, do we have a decision deadline?
The decision deadline is dictated by when you close the public hearing, so you're okay
So we're
with the
okay
decision
until we do.
deadline, public, it's when you have the development plan that we gotta be cognizant of that.
And the 12th works for the applicant?
It does, thank you.
Okay. All right, then, we've got a motion to continue to February 12th. That's been seconded. So I'll start with the vote with Steve.
Steve, I.
Liz?
I,
Bill, aye. Bill, aye. Ernie, aye. All right, so that, continuance, to the 12th passes, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
I'd like to ask the audience to continue staying involved, and thank you for coming tonight. I know that, there's a lot of meetings on this, but please stay involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Good to see you. Thank you very much.
That's great.
Yeah. Good time on a weeknight.
Yeah.
January weeknight.
Have a good one.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, I do that too. Okay.
Not having anything, exactly, right.
Thank you for coming in, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Casey, for the feedback. All right, so
Thank you. All right, so we got general business, couple items. Where'd you like to go next?
yeah, okay, if we could please do 250 Hartford Ave, the minor modification request.
Okay, do we have the applicant?
Yeah, there are, hold on. We've got more business going on. It's okay. If you want to take any conversation down in the
I
lobby.
wanted to ask you a question.
Okay. All right.
Can you just come over for a minute?
No, I can't because we're gonna
Okay.
get this going, but.
On the agenda. So, on the agenda, when I printed it down, it actually says on underneath the, on King Street, that it's, the applicant is seeking a special permit and stormwater management permit for 1,600 age-restricted housing units. Should that be revised?
We don't revise the public hearing. We got another item that we're trying to get through. Can I give you my card and we can talk about this?
I
later?
just wanted to
Yeah,
answer.
yeah.
Just saying, yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's not something that you would do, then I understand.
Yeah, I can
So-
talk about it if you want to give me a call.
All
Okay?
right, all right, I will. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your attention. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay.
So.
So we're gonna go to 250 Hartford Avenue, minor modification request. Is that
Correct.
Good
So
job.
just to explain what's going on.
Feels, for sure.
Just to explain what's going on, we have Jeff Davis and Donya Osborne, who are architects, working with, this is actually Walmart's site. So if you recall, or if you've driven by on 495, you'll see there's a pylon sign that's along 495. you can't actually see it because there's trees now covering it because it's older, and this dates back to 1991 when the approval occurred. So basically what this is, in 1991, when this was approved, the special permit called for the pylon sign. So right now, it doesn't meet the current zoning, but because the pylon sign was allowed through the initial special permit, you can modify it. If they wanted to go and build a new pylon sign and it wasn't there, you're talking about a variance with the zoning board of appeals, but it's a little different. So essentially what they're coming in for is to extend or enlarge the Walmart sign. I'll let them go into the details. We have some plans. Ultimately, what I would recommend is, typically with the board, if you're contemplating a change like this, usually let me rephrase that. Usually the planning board isn't even the one that's dealing with this. It's usually the ZBA to the variance request. Usually there's a site visit to go and take a look at the height using like a balloon test or a flag test just to see what the height is. Ultimately I would recommend maybe doing that before rendering a decision, but I think now is a good time to just get an understanding of what they're proposing. Any questions, comments, concerns, and then kind of move on from there.
May I ask a procedural question?
Sure.
So they've got an approved plan from 91,
Yes.
and they're looking to clarify this as a minor modification of the existing. Have we established that this is a minor?
No, so that's something that you're going to have to do. So what I would recommend is hear what they want to do. And for something like this, it might make sense looking at the intensity of what this is going to look like in the field before making the major and minor decision. The only difference is with a major is, it just becomes a special, a public hearing, so they just have to notify abutters. But that's what I would probably recommend doing in this case. Just because this is it's different, you're looking at the intensity of a sign essentially, and that,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, so, that Mr. Osborne that's gonna be presenting?
I think Jeff is.
Yeah.
Jeff?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Jeff.
Okay,
Apologies
great.
for that delay. I was not expecting that hearing to go as long as it did.
That was a interesting conversation, I should say. So, um, my name is Jeff Davis. I'm not an architect. I'm a permit coordinator for PB2 Architecture and Engineering. We're the architects of record for the remodel for the Walmart at 250 Hartford Avenue. Um, as as you mentioned that there is a pylon sign that goes alongside 495. And when this store was built back in 1991, 92, I'm sure those trees were a lot smaller than they are today. We've had, what, 32, 33 years of growth there, and the existing sign, which is 40 feet tall overall height from the base of the sign, is basically invisible from the highway, which is I guess the target area for that sign. So Walmart would like to do is raise that sign um, from 40 feet overall height to possibly 100 feet overall height to get over the tree canopy and allow for some extra room for tree growth before we have to um, I guess do something else with the sign in another 30 years. Um, we did do a what's called a flag test or a balloon test. the information that we received is the sign contractor went out there in basically a bucket truck and hung a plywood sign, 50 feet from grade to the top of the sign and took pictures. And even then, it was not a noticeable improvement of over what's there um, over the I'm sorry, what's there currently. So Walmart would like to um, basically remove that sign and replace it with a 100-foot tall structure. I think a single pole pylon, and see if we can get that sign over the tree canopy. We did look at removing some of the trees or trimming them back, but those trees are not on the same property as the Walmart store.
Yeah, I think the trees are within the DOT right of way for 495, so, because the initial thought is, oh, just cut them down, but DOT is not gonna allow that, so.
And people get kind of angry when we start whacking trees. So
That is true.
What size? Fine.
So I
This
think,
drawing has specified.
yeah, the question, Jeff, that is just being raised is
yes,
what is the size of the proposed sign, which maybe would be helpful to know how much larger, smaller, same size it is compared to what's there now.
correct. Well, what's there right now is Walmart's. It was Walmart's prototypical sign back then, which was 5'5" tall by 20 feet long, making it 108 square feet. Um, uh, Walmart would like to go as big as humanly possible with the sign. So initially they're proposing a sign that is 10 feet by 36 feet, so 360 square feet as opposed to the 108 square feet that's there right now. I know that
Does your current sign light up?
it is externally illuminated. So there are floodlights that shine up on the cabinet itself. It is not internally illuminated.
And what I'm seeing is the drawing that you're giving us shows it's internally lit up.
Walmart will,
So you're
Walmart,
saying,
Walmart would like to switch to an internally illuminated cabinet.
okay, let me ask, well, does the current bylaw allow for something like this?
That's a good question. I'd have to ask Tim.
I would
So,
have to research that.
yeah, and so really the purpose of this meeting is to kind of get an idea of, number one, the actual request itself.
Yeah.
And that's really the point here, not necessarily to make a decision. Because obviously it's a significantly sized sign, which I think going out and seeing what this thing is gonna look like is kind of the critical.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
But I'd like to do that. If I'm thinking, how many signs do we have on 495 up and down the entire Bellingham landscape? I'm not thinking too many.
There aren't many.
I'm not thinking there's many at all. So this is kind of a change, but is there any other questions from the board?
I'm cutting tiles. You're talking about a sign the size of the ceiling almost.
Okay.
Just to give some perspective.
Okay.
And I know, sorry, Jeff, you can't see the ceiling above us, but we have a soffit area around the lower end. But the upper ceiling is pretty damn close. It is a little longer, but width-wise, it's almost exactly the 30 feet. Well, it's 36. We're definitely there. And then you got the 10, so we're half of the size That's a huge sign.
It is a very large sign, and it's also going to, um, potentially be 100 feet up in the air. I know right now, if you took the existing sign cabinet, 5 by 20 and hoisted it up 100 feet in the air, it'd be more like, well, a toothpick holding up a postage stamp. It would just look pretty bizarre.
Bill, you have any?
Yeah, I recall a couple things. If we talk about what's on 495, there's a landscape company up in Maple Street. It has a sign that was permitted by the town of Franklin. So when we look, that's not in Bellingham.
Not in Bellingham.
Years ago, there was a permit for, I believe, a large sign in that area that did not, I do not think it met the bylaws. We had a sign committee years ago, which I was part of. Also, since I've been on the board, and Brian was a proponent of this, we want to keep the illumination and signage as low profile as we can on 495. And I think we've done that since I've been on the board.
Well, I remember Maple Street, or one of the Maple Street projects in the last year, there was concerns about light. So I'm agreeing that there's a concern. Liz, would you like to comment or?
I mean, well, we're here to decide if it's major or minor, right?
You can. What I am saying is I think you might want to
Go see
take
it.
a look and see before you even make the mind, because essentially what I would recommend, I mean, I can tell by everybody's faces that, a 100-foot tall sign at this size it's a big change and it's concerning. So number one, if that magnitude was done, you're not necessarily in favor of it and probably would be considered a major change. I think what would be helpful and why I'm kind of pushing the maybe go out with, the Walmart representatives to look at the site. Jeff did mention that, they would like it to be 100 feet. They would like it to be this size.
Yeah.
I think it would be a lot better to kind of tell from a balloon test, what does 50 feet look like? What does 75 feet look like? And perhaps leaving the sign the same size. That's the discussion. And if that is something that you would like to discuss potentially, and I don't know if Walmart or Jeff would be interested in having those conversations in the future. Maybe it is a minor request, maybe it's a major request. That's where it's kind of figuring out what the magnitude is by going out there.
Yeah.
And I will further add, if the board is just saying we don't want to see a sign from 495, if that's your opinion, then you can always just vote that it's a minor modification and vote no tonight. It's up to you, but.
Jeff, question for you. Do you have one of these signs anywhere close by proximity in terms of another Walmart that you've put 100-foot sign up?
Lyman Street.
I cannot think of any off the top of my head.
Okay.
I can point to some examples that are in Texas where you have a whole lot of flat land where you can't there's really nothing impeding sightlines about there. But I can't I can't think of one off the top of my head for comparisons.
Yep, no, Jeff, fair answer. Well, just
One other question, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
So the store size and the design is there multiple sign options that you would have that would fit into the size store, or is this the one and only thing Walmart's doing these days?
Are you asking if there are smaller options for signs for the proposed sign, or
Well, I'm clearly hearing that this is what you'd like to do.
Mhm.
I guess I'm asking, is there any wiggle room in that?
Oh, there's always a wiggle room. There there are smaller options. Of course, Walmart's first option would be to, ask for the biggest thing that they can get. Um, but there are smaller options. I know their photo sizes are, oh, let me think, 9 by 33, which is slightly smaller, and um, the the standard quote big sign for uh I'm sorry, signs like this would be more on the lines of 7 by 28, which is, I think, close to double the size of what is existing right now. I think that's 190. Oh, I'm trying to do some back of the envelope math. 196 square feet, um, as opposed to, 360 with that big 10 by 36. So there are wiggle rooms, and there are options that Walmart can take.
My my concern is that right now you don't have a sign that's, self-illuminating with lights inside and all this stuff. And you're moving to something that you don't, you're changing what's going on dramatically.
Mhm.
Typically if we had other types of projects that were not sign related, we're asking about dark sky compliant and all this other stuff that we don't want light spillage over. Now granted, this is in a big retail location, so it's not but I guess, Rob,
Well, I mean, there
I'm
are
not
other
opposed to
options.
going to look. I'd like to hear what the rest of the board is. If the rest of the board has got an opinion already,
On their sign, you know how, because I never noticed, but you'll go down the highway and you'll see a sign near the highway that says, Exxon gas station, Joe Blow's restaurant, they have a sign that tells you what's off the exit. Are there anything like that? That, that
I think
exists now?
I think
Yeah.
just gas stations, but they don't have like the retail elements or anything on. And
Well, that's all up to DOT, and you have to pay significant amount of money to put one of those up. And because when you're going down to Franklin, I think there's like a Puppuccino's one.
yeah, it's a lot of
In 99 for restaurants going off the Franklin exit. It all depends on the developers or the owners of property, whether they want to put a sign out on the highway, and that's all through DOT, I know
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
And it's a very hefty sum to get on that. You can't just go and put your sticker up if there's a room.
Well, to Phil's point earlier, we don't even know if this size and height is in the bylaws, right?
I've got the
Or-
bylaws up.
It's not in the bylaws.
It's not in
Yeah,
there at all.
the signage bylaws, and that's why it was permitted through the special permit in 1991, which is the only reason why this is going on. So like I said, I would recommend if the board wants to maybe discuss, I can internally discuss with Jeff other options while also seeing if we can quantify sizes through perhaps a balloon test, which I can coordinate with Jeff. This isn't a public hearing, so you don't have to do anything. We can just continue the conversation to a later meeting date. I don't mean to push it along. It's almost.
yeah, no, it's,
It's.
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I'm
And looking,
I'd like to hear about whether it's part of the, whether it fit into the bylaw and if it's yes or no, that type of thing.
It doesn't.
It does
It's
not. Then to me, this is almost like a major modification as is.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I'm gonna make the motion, but if somebody else did, I don't think I'd.
just
have a
to
problem with
make
it.
my comment on the building signage, I went through this drawing pretty detailed when I was at work. That I would think would be considered minor modification, the signage on the buildings itself. The pylon, I think, is sign that we're talking about being 300 in some square feet, that I think is a major.
I, is, the rest of the board thinking similarly?
Can I ask a question, Rob?
No. Go ahead, Bill.
We're talking about signage on buildings.
No, we're not.
Well,
That's something different.
Yeah, the signage on the building is all related to the building permit. There is nothing planning related with the
okay, I,
signage on the
well,
building.
it just was confusing was all together.
These plans that were submitted, were related to the overarching, remodel that they're doing,
Okay.
the color scheme. But both of these plans had the picture of the existing pylon sign and the proposed one shown.
I agree with Bill's comments, that it's outside the bylaws, and it could be a major consideration.
And, you know, if the rest of the board is feeling that way, then maybe,
So
maybe that's the process that we do here. There's always an opportunity to, we're just, if we declare this as a major modification, they don't have a proposal to it. They haven't made an application.
they wouldn't make an application.
They would-
because it's a modification.
It's a modification.
So they would submit the materials in their request, which is what they've done. And I always put, whenever there's a modification request,
Yeah.
I always put minor modification request because, you know, there's no public hearing that was listed. If it was a major modification request, then there'd be a public hearing for this. I put it as this so it makes more sense to the board, but make no mistake that it is up to you to make that determination.
Yeah.
So whenever there's a modification request, I am always going to put it on the general business as
No, I
minor
appreciate it,
modification.
and thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
So just not to belabor this, but the difference between minor and major is one requires a public hearing?
Yeah, so they would just be required to,
So,
to
So
notify.
do I really
minor-
feel
minor-
like there's a need for a public hearing? That's the question
Well-
that I would. Yeah, I mean, I
I'm not
agree that
sure-
it's major,
yeah,
but given the nature of what they're looking for, is there really a need for a public hearing for it? And that's a question I'm asking.
well, I guess procedurally, and Rob, you correct me if I'm wrong. Right now, they're looking to modify an existing permit that they have, more or less. So if they're coming in front of us asking us to modify, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're asking us to modify an existing permit. So the process from there, is it a minor or a major? If it's a minor, then we really can make a decision and just move forward with it with, you know, have the staff work on it, that type of thing. It's kind of a moves on. If it's a major one, then that triggers a public hearing. It gets the whole thing involved. So, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, they could also go through the ZBA and look. Could they go through the ZBA and make a?
No,
Because is that how they got it the last time?
No, it was all
Right,
through
it was-
the
it was all through the
permit
special
through
permit.
through the planning board, which is why it's in front of you.
So at this point, it feels like this is not a minor.
And all I will say is if you don't want to go through the major versus minor right now, my thought would be see the intensity of the sign in the field. And, you know, I can talk to Jeff offline because that's how this is done to see what some other options are. You can go and look at the site, and if you feel that even like option B or C is quite intense, and you can either say, I'm not in favor of it at all, so I'll just vote no on this regardless of it being major or minor, they can do that. Or if you feel that it is doable, then you might want to do minor, you might want to do major. You know, it's up to you, but I think the critical thing is taking a look to see what the intensity of the sign is. I would say that based on the discussions that we are having right now, the request for a 100-foot height sign at 10 feet by 36 feet is a major request, and it sounds like it's not very well supported. So the applicant might not even want to move forward with a major modification request for that. I can this is why I'm saying maybe we could set up a site visit,
I think that's a good approach.
okay?
Yeah,
So I wouldn't even make the determination on minor versus major right now.
okay.
Once the request is finalized, then, make your determination and
Yeah.
move forward with that.
That's fine.
All
Okay,
right.
I'm for that. Any other discussion?
I'd just like to ask Jeff, to ask Walmart, is there one anywhere in New England?
Yeah, well,
100-foot sign.
and Jeff, you and I can go back, we can talk and Donnie as well to figure out, get some of that information that works.
Sure thing.
Yeah,
Sure thing.
good.
All right. So I think we've handled that topic, and Rob, Jeff, and Don will be talking, and I think we'll move on to the next topic, and if that would be great. And with the idea that we'd probably do some sort of site visit with maybe some options in the future.
Yeah, so does that work with you, Jeff and Donnie? I'll reach out. We can kind of just coordinate that offline.
Yeah, absolutely. We can discuss that, and we can I'll ask Walmart if they have any if they have any large signs nearby, or I can see if I can pull some examples of what Walmart has done in the past elsewhere,
Sure.
and then see if we can coordinate a better balloon or flag test showing proposed signs at different heights um, for the board to consider.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Jeff, Don, appreciate again coming on. We'll talk soon, all right?
Sure, not a problem.
All right. Thank you both. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the next general business, snap trail. Rob?
Yeah, so the Snet Trail bond, this one's also a little interesting too. Normally the bond is posted, as soon as construction starts. I'm not too sure what exactly happened, but the good news is DPW caught on that there wasn't a surety bond posted, which it's no harm, no foul because there's been no building permits pulled for this yet. So the
For
way
the record, this was before your time.
yeah, I don't.
For the record, I think it was.
It was.
Thank you.
I wasn't gonna say it.
I know, I was gonna say it.
Well, you're
Thank you.
kind. But so with that, the way that it was actually Barry who put this together, and actually in a way it's it's very good that we held off because as you know, we just adjusted all of these bonds. So even with the percent complete, if we use the 2014 numbers, it would probably still be less than what we're getting for a surety with a good portion of the road complete. So what our DPW did when they did this, they adjusted the bond for some of the items that have already been inspected and signed off, but there's still a majority of the road with the final paving, the curbing, and a lot of the drainage that still needs to be finished. So in total, the bond estimate that was calculated it's still significant. It's almost $500,000. It's $418,792 for the bond that we would like in place for this.
The estimated cost column, that's cost, what does that represent?
Estimated cost is related to,
There's two columns that are labeled that, 1% complete and the other one's.
So the estimated cost is associated with the bid estimate and length of road. So like, for example, the clear and grub 40-foot right of way, that estimated cost is associated with whatever it costs per the bid estimate to clear and grub per square foot of roadway calculated by the proposed roadway. So the total cost to do this would be $57,412. But this is a prime example where the roadway, it's at binder course right now. So that's why there's a reduction. And it's been inspected by DPW and signed off on, which is also very critical. But, the clear and grub is done, but they held a conservative 80% just to keep some number in there in case for some reason they'd have to tap that, if the project was abandoned or if there was issues during the road acceptance procedure, but that's where that other estimated cost comes into play. So some it's zero because it's been fully completed, others it's 80%, others it's 0%. So it's like for the
Middle column's just a multiplier.
So the bond, so the bond's really 83,758 at this point?
no, that's 20% of the, so that's the 20% can't be withdrawn until the road is accepted or it's been in place for 3 years.
Okay.
So it's the bond, the total guarantee required is $418,792. This is in black and white.
And had this been done at the origination of the project, with current numbers, it would have been at 2.4 mil.
Correct. So the full cost of that road for the bid estimate is 2.4. So, but they've done most of the work. So we need to do, we're keeping the surety in place.
In check with
Correct.
those that are signed off, you don't have to call a charity bond on it.
Correct. So
Because it's already been done and signed off on it.
yeah, and that's why like a lot of times they'll even request the reduction. Like they'll put in most of the roadway, get it to really the point where it is now, and then they request the reduction and do the building permits. So like I said, no harm, no foul. It actually worked out well because we waited until those bond estimates were updated.
I'm seeing the spreadsheet here. All right, so right now you're looking for an approval of
The bond,
the bond at the amount of,
$418,792.
okay, do we have a motion?
Yeah, so moved.
Made by Marty, seconded by Bill. Any questions? All right, start the voting, Steve.
Steve, aye?
Liz, I.
Bill, I.
Bill, aye.
Marty, I.
And the motion passes 5-0. I guess that leaves one thing left on the agenda. That's the meeting minutes. Have we all had time to read through the meeting minutes, and were there any concerns?
Are they not in here? I don't think they're-
I had extra.
Marty had 3.
Oh, I know, but then Bill had, I gave one to Bill. I think I have some here too.
I think Amy left them out of my packet, which is fine. I accept that. I was here. I know what happened.
Read through them tonight. Already. I didn't see anything that was concerning. Anybody see anything concerning, or would you like?
Not from that meeting, like everything.
Okay. Then, I would accept the motion to approve the minutes from December 11th, 2025. Made by Bill, seconded by? Second. Marty, vote starting with Steve.
Steve, I.
Liz, I.
Bill, I.
Bill, aye.
Marty, I.
And the motion passes 5-0. Anything else tonight, Rob?
That's it. Next meeting is January 22nd.
Are we sure?
Yeah,
Yeah, next week.
this was a weird
Weird calendar.
situation.
Yeah, next week.
It's because of the way that the first fell.
Yeah. Okay.
When do I have to come, do I have to come here and watch the minutes of this so that it's read in that I've
No,
updated myself?
no. So if you watch the Zoom, which you may have already done,
I've gotten through like 2/3 of it.
yeah. So all you do, there's a form that it's essentially an affidavit, but it's
That says I actually got caught up.
yeah, and it just goes into the town clerk. So I can email it to you, and if you want to
would.
just sign it, and you can email it back, I'll get it clocked in with the clerk.
Okay.
So
Known as the Mullins.
yeah,
I couldn't remember the name. Thank you.
I'll do that for you, Marty. Okay,
I appreciate
and
it.
anyone else.
All right, unless there's any other topics, I would entertain a motion to end the meeting.
Second.
Made by Steve, seconded by Liz. Start with the vote with Marty this time.
Marty, I.
Bill, aye.
Bill, I.
Liz, I.
Levi.
And that motion passes 5-0.
And, thank you for your time, guys.
This is a long one.